So hey guys, this is your favorite the fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto become a Black Reaper's Rinnegan of Death God and Goddess? But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. In the land of fire, the village hidden in the leaves was a peaceful place filled with lush forests and calm blue skies. But today was not one of those days. The sky grew dark as black clouds engulfed the sky, making the village look as if the apocalypse was drawing near. What many of the shinobi had figured out was, it was the apocalypse. Ninja after ninja collapsed on the ground, only get back up, or in some cases, cease to move ever again. A man with gravity-defying, white hair, and uncovered red Sharingan looked mournfully at the prone bodies spread all around him. Some were friends, some were enemies, but all were shinobi of the hidden leaf, and they lay unmoving on the ground at his feet. Kakashi Hatake, son of the infamous White Fang, sighed sadly as he gazed up at the cause of all the chaos erupting all over the village. The most powerful of all the great-tailed beasts, the destructive and feared nine-tailed fox. The attack was totally random. The nine-tailed fox had not been seen the famous battle between Konoha's two founders, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Of course, Kakashi was one of the few who knew where the Kyuubi had been for the last 100 years. He knew who it was sealed into in its Jinchuriki. What didn't know was how the Kyuubi escaped from its seal, and that the attack of the demon fox was not random. The nine-tailed fox roared fiercely, its nine tails lashing out and destroying everything in their path. "Hold it off and wait for the fourth Hokage," a Chunin yelled. His face covered in blood, Kakashi quickly joined the others on the roofs of the buildings surrounding the Kyuubi. He slipped a few kunai out of his pouch and deftly wrapped them in explosive tags. "Fire!" the Anbu captain hollered. All the shinobi hurled the kunai at the fox and shouted, "Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu." The fox tuned, only to see a giant hail of shurikennen. Kunai descend from the sky like a large black meteor. The fox glared menacingly at, and snarled in rage, then roared. A shockwave emanated from his mouth as the weapon slammed against him in one large stroke, detonating against its body and shielding him from view. The shinobi instantly relaxed, and began grinning at each other, but Kakashi knew that it wasn't over. "Kakashi, my eternal rival. It seems we have managed to defeat this beast through our amazing flames of youth." Guy screamed as he began to dance in a circle wildly flailing his arms. Kakashi rolled his eyes at his rival's antics. "Fire again," Kakashi bellowed, ignoring Guy's rants. "But we already got him, Kakashi," another Chunin yelled back. "He's not dead." "Ah damn it," Kakashi cursed as he heard the Kyuubi's roar. Sud. NLY an orange tail flew out of the smoke and buried itself in the Chunin's chest. The Chunin's eyes went wide with surprise, and gurgled as the tail yanked out of his body and sped towards the opposite roof. "No," Kakashi yelled as he charged his chakra into his palm. The sound of chirping birds filled the area as Kakashi leapt in the tail's path and whispered, "Reikiri." 30 minutes earlier with Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. "Minato Namikaze, back away from the Jinchuriki, or your son dies before he even opens his eyes." Minato's eyes widened as he glanced at Kushina's tearful face. Everything was going so well. He thought sorrowfully, "I just became a father, and once again, I thought everything was going to be okay. I never thought this could happen." "Hold on. Just calm down," Minato said, slowly holding up his hands. He felt his forehead grow clammy as Kushina cried in pain. The orange-masked man chuckled. "You should take your own advice, Namikaze. I am perfectly calm. Now, back away from the Jinchuriki, or your son dies." "Naruto," Kushina yelled desperately. "Well, I'm waiting," the masked man growled darkly, his mood shifting again. Minato shifted nervously, his hand itching towards his weapon's pouch. "Don't even think about it," the masked man laughed gleefully. "Or the boy gets his face carved out," he suddenly snarled ferociously, gripping the kunai under the baby's chin. Minato gritted his teeth angrily, careful not to show too much emotion in his face. He defiantly stood his ground as the Kyuubi's seal on his wife's stomach began to weaken again. "Oh well, that's too bad," the masked man said calmly, lifting the kunai high, ready to strike Naruto. Minato gasped and blurred out of sight. The masked man looked at Minato with mild surprise, as he Realized Naruto was no longer in his hands. You truly do live up to your reputation as the fastest man alive, Namikaze. Too bad it's your last moment. Minato's eyes widened as the explosive tags on Naruto's blanket fizzled to life and exploded, engulfing the two in flames. Kushina gasped in horror as flames filled her vision. But, when the fire died down, there was no one to be found. Everything is going as planned, the masked man declared as he advanced on Kushina's prone body, silently laughing gleefully at the frightened look on her face. You should be safe here for now, Minato said so. FTLY as he gently placed Naruto on the empty bed. Naruto's eyes filled with tears as he began to cry, his voice echoing through the room. Minato smiled at him sadly. I am sorry, Naruto, he said. But your mother needs my help right now. I promise we will spend time together when I get back. With that, he preformed a single-hand seal and vanished in a yellow flash. Back to the present. So, his attack is his weakness. When he solidifies, he leaves himself open to a counterattack. The only way I can win is by being faster than he is. Minato shifted into his stance once again. This is going to be a battle of speed. Minato thought as he charged forward, tri-pronged kunai in hand. I have to help Sarutobi stop the Kyuubi, but before that, I must defeat him. Even if he is Madara Uchiha, I must win. With renewed vigor, he deftly flung the kunai at Toba's face and watched it sank through his forehead. Tobi reached out to grab the Yondaime, but he wasn't there. Tobi winced as he felt the impact of the Rinnegan slam into him from above, smashing him into the ground. That was the Flying Thunder God technique, level 2, Minato said grimly. Tobi was cursing as he felt his victory slip away through his very fingers. Minato grinned. I marked him. Tobi gasped in pain inwardly as he felt the tri-pronged kunai plunge into his stomach. He slowly lifted his head to see Minato directly in front of him holding the weapon. Probably marked me with a teleportation seal somewhere, he thought as the pain in his stomach dulled into a throb. His eyes widened as he felt Minato's hand slam into his chest. What are you doing? Tobi asked with a touch of panic in his voice. I'm placing a seal on you, Minato said tightly. Slowly, he lifted his hand from Toba's chest. Now, the Kyuubi is no longer your weapon to be command, he declared. Tobi slowly straightened and the hole in his mask flashed. You truly are impressive, Hokage of Konoha. I can see you deserve your title. Enjoy your small victory for now. But do not think you have won. I will destroy Konoha, I swear it. Just you wait, I will have my revenge. In the meantime, try not to die. I look forward to a rematch where I can finally kill you. Minato's gaze hardened as Tobi disappeared through his space-time ninjutsu vortex. Minato picked up his fallen Hiruzen kunai, and vanished in a yellow flash. He knew that the Sandaime, Hiruzen Sarutobi as well as many of the Leaf Ninja were fighting the beast, but he also knew that casualties were going to keep rising until he did his duty as the fourth Hokage. With a hardened resolve, he prepared to face the strongest of the tailed beasts. With the Kyuubi, Kakashi was panting, his face filled with soot and grime, and his clothes were torn. With the Sandaime's help they had managed to drive away the Kyuubi from the village. It seemed strange to Kakashi. Before, his Raikiri only nicked the fox's tail and it had responded aggressively, killing 10 more men with one swipe of his tail. He saw Ganzu Yumino tell his son to flee as the fox's tail ended his life. But after it did that, it became less aggressive, almost as if it was letting them drive it out of the village. Kakashi smiled fondly behind his mask. If I know Sensei, he's the one responsible for the Kyuubi's sudden decease in strength. I don't know how, but only he could do such a thing. The 9-tailed fox is falling back. Do not hesitate. Press forward. The Sandaime yelled, wielding his monkey-summoned staff, Enma. Yes, Guy screamed. Kakashi groaned. Here it comes, he thought. Attack. With your fiery passionate flames of youth, Guy screamed passionately at the top of his lungs. Kakashi, my eternal rival, what say we see who can land the most blows on the beast? I am sorry my friend, but you have already lost. For I am surely more faster than you are, Guy finished dramatically. Ah, sorry Guy, did you say something? Kakashi asked dully glancing away from the battle. Guy's eyes went wide in disbelief and exasperation. Oh Kakashi, My eternal rival, why must you be so hip and cool? It's dulling my flames of youth. Guy wailed. Kakashi shrugged and formed lightning-fast hand seals. He quickly breathed in. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. A dragon quickly formed in the lake behind them and launched towards the Kyuubi and crashed into its stomach. There was only one problem. The beast didn't even look phased. The Kyuubi shook as multicolor chakra leaked out of his body. Kakashi and the other ninjas suddenly felt that this was not going to be pretty. The Kyuubi opened his mouth as the chakra gathered at the base of his maw, forming a ball. Instantly, Kakashi knew exactly what that attack was. The tailed beast ball, he whispered with dread. Kakashi closed his eyes. Sensei, you better hurry. He mumbled, knowing that if that attack was released, there was almost nothing they could do to stop it. The Kyuubi swallowed the ball and opened his mouth again and the ninja's eyes widened as a red beam blasted from his mouth. The shinobi all closed their eyes, expecting death, while a select few peed their pants, but the blast never came. Kakashi and the others hesitatingly opened their eyes. It's gone, Kakashi said, smiling. Good luck, sensei. Everyone, quickly head back to the village and help however you can, the Sandaime yelled over the joyous cries of the shinobi. This battle is not yet over. Boom. Minato gasped heavily. Transporting the Kyuubi and himself was very taxing and had cut down his chakra by 1/3. Minato looked up to see the Kyuubi glaring angrily at him. Summoning jutsu, he yelled, slamming his palm on the ground. There was a huge puff of smoke, and from it emerged Minato, atop a monstrously large orange toad with a pipe in his mouth and a sword at his hip. Gamabunta, I need your help, Minato told him. What is it now, Gaki? Oh, the Kyuubi. This is not good at all. You always get yourself in the worst situations, you know that. Minato forced a small laugh. Alright, here we go. Hold on tight now, Gamabunta croaked. He drew his sword from his hip and charged at the Kyuubi with surprising speed. Minato struggled to stay on as the two great beasts exchanged blows. Minato looked on sadly as he realized the battle was entirely one-sided. Suddenly, Gamabunta cried out in pain as one of his eyes was slashed. Bunta, are you alright? Minato yelled. Gamabunta grunted in assurance as he leapt back a safe distance. Alright, Bunta, he's still too close to the village. Get me close enough to him. Gotcha. Gamabunta grunted and shot forward like a rocket grappling the Kyuubi with both hands. Do it, Minato, Gamabunta yelled. Minato formed a hand seal as both sides disappeared in a yellow flash, only to reappear farther away from the village. Minato smiled grimly, despite the situation. His chakra was growing lower by the minute and sweat was dripping down his face. I have to seal it, Minato gasped. I have to set up a barrier. Quote. Gamabunta nodded, a worried look etched on his face. Good luck Gaki, Gamabunta said sincerely. Thank you, Minato whispered as Gamabunta burst into smoke. Yonto raced through hand seals and created a solid purple barrier around himself and the Kyuubi. He looked back at the Kyuubi and gasped in surprise. The Kyuubi was covered in chains, chakra chains. Minato's blood ran cold. He only knew of one person who could use such a skill. He looked down to see his wife, Kushina, chakra chains sprouting out of her back and tightly restraining the demon fox. Kushina, what are you doing? Why are you here? Kushina smiled sadly at him. I am going to seal the Kyuubi back into myself. You can't do that, Minato argued sadly. Your link to him is too weak now. You won't have the strength to hold him down. Minato, she said softly. I think we both know that I am dying. At Konoha Hospital. Ow! Kakashi yelled, rubbing his cheek. What was the for? Rin, he demanded indignantly. For being such a dumbass, she retorted angrily. What were you thinking sneaking away from the rest of us? Perhaps his flames of youth were not bright enough, Guy interjected helpfully. Oh, sorry Guy, did you say some ow, mother F? Don't you dare complete that sentence, Rin warned. Kakashi gulped audibly and shut up instantly. Besides, it was your own fault you and Guy got hurt. You two were the only ones who had the nerve to disobey Kurenai-san's father's direct order to stay put. It's not my fault if you keep squealing like a baby every time I dress a wound. By the way, she said in a more serious tone. Have you heard from Minato-sensei yet? Kakashi stared at the ground for at least a minute before replying. He teleported the Kyuubi away. My guess is he's fighting it himself. Rin gasped. Do you think he'll be okay? She asked worriedly, her eyes wet. Kakashi put on a confident smile behind his mask. Of course he will. He is the Hokage after all. I know, she said sadly. But I wonder how far the power of the Hokage can reach, she thought to herself. With Minato and the Kyuubi. Kushina, there is only one way to end this, Minato said sadly. Naruto, who was still in her arms, began to cry. Kushina's eyes filled with tears. I can't, she cried. He is our only son. I cannot let him lead the life of a Jinchuriki. Please, Minato, not my son. Kushina, he said gently. Who else can I ask? How can I possibly ask someone else to sacrifice their child, Kushina? Kushina lowered her head, letting the tears flow freely across her cheeks. Suddenly, the chains snapped. Minato and Kushina gasped as they saw the Kyuubi's claw heading straight towards their newborn son. No, they cried and immediately leapt in the claw's path. Minato and Kushina both gritted their teeth in pain as they felt the claw plunge through their backs, and stopped just before Naruto. Minato, Kushina whispered. Thank you for everything. She said softly. My only regret is that I couldn't see my son grow up into a handsome man, and I couldn't experience a real family. I understand it is your duty. Minato nodded slowly, a single tear rolling down his cheek. He looked down proudly at his son. Jiraiya-sensei once told me that I might be the destined child, but I never believed him. There is a reason you were born, Naruto. You have a great destiny. And I have no doubt in my mind that you will make me proud. If only I could be alive to watch you and guide you along the way. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes opened. Minato gasped. The boy's eyes were purple with rings inside. The Rinnegan. He breathed in awe. Then he frowned. If the boy was able to use the Rinnegan when he was born, then had meant that he would not be able to survive. Chakra would constantly be released from his body. It would kill him, unless he gained the right amount of chakra to use it. He held a hand over the boy's forehead, and whispered, 5 elemental seal. A blue GL. Filled the boy's forehead as the Rinnegan disappeared and was replaced with warm sky blue eyes. Minato stumbled as he felt the backlash from using so much chakra hit him full force. I will seal half the fox's chakra in Naruto, and keep the other half under lock and key until he is ready. He quickly handed the boy to Kushina, who kissed him gently on the forehead and both cheeks. Good luck, my son, Naruto. He held the baby towards the fox and cried out, Dead demon seal. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the retired Sandaime Hokage, looked down sadly at his wife's grave. He looked around and he was not surprised to see many others doing the same. So many had died last night, over 1/3 of the village's forces. The Sandaime sighed, letting his thoughts wander. Bawako's death was strange, he mused. It did not look like the work of a monster. It almost looked a kunai stab. The Sandaime shook his head ruefully. The only one could have told him how his beloved wife died, had left the world of the living. Another death that was painful to bear, Minato and Kushina, after the sealing, had seemingly disappeared. The Sandaime already guessed that they had sealed their remaining chakra in Naruto, in order to speak with him someday. He groaned inwardly. Naruto, the poor boy. If the fourth was alive, he could have revealed that Naruto was his son and protected him from outside dangers, but now, revealing that fact would create the hidden stone or hidden cloud to try and kill the boy, thus releasing the Kyuubi once more. Sarutobi was not by any means in his prime, and feared he would not have the power to protect the boy like Minato could. The only way to ensure the boy's safety from outside forces was to change his surname to Uzumaki, and not reveal his parentage until the time was right. Sarutobi gritted his teeth. He knew that it wasn't enough to keep Naruto safe completely. He had no doubt that the wealthy civilian council members would hire people to harm the boy, and he also knew that some shinobi wouldn't shed a tear to see a young boy in such a predicament. Sir. The Sandaime turned around to see an Anbu with a dog mask kneeling on the ground. Yes, what is it, dog? Quote, the elders have called an emergency council meeting, and they need you there, sir. Sarutobi slammed a palm against his forehead. Dog Kakashi fought back a laugh. Don't they only need Asuma for this sort of thing? He grumbled. The fire daimyo calls for you too. The Sandaime bit back a curse. All right, tell them I will be along in about 10 minutes, he said bitterly. Dog nodded and body flickered away. I already know what they are going to ask me, Sarutobi mumbled. And I will have to say yes. In the council meeting room. The esteemed council of Konoha was in pandemonium when Sarutobi arrived. The Sandaime groaned in annoyance. The council had not changed since he left. Only one thing had changed. The volume of the bickering from the civilian council was even more high-pitched and annoying than before. The cause was one certain pink-haired woman. The Sandaime gritted his teeth. Sake Haruno, the pink banshee of Konoha. He had heard stories about her from Asuma, but he had to say. He never expected her voice to make his ears bleed. Suddenly, Homura slammed his can on the ground. The council's squabble slowly decreased, until Sarutobi was met with complete silence. Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded at Homura, whom he had regarded as a friend for many years, then seated himself next to Fugaku and Asuma, who looked like he wanted nothing more than to wring the pink banshee's neck. Hiruzen looked around at the shinobi council, each a leader of their own clan. Fugaku Uchiha, Hiyashi Hyuga, Tsume Inazuka, Shuza Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka, Asuma Sarutobi, Shibi Aburame, Agari Keduan, and Haru Kurama, last two OC. He then glanced at the civilian council with mild disgust, not recalling all of their names. There was Sake Haruno, and a fat, bald, rich civilian named Guro. But he couldn't recall the rest, or rather he didn't want to recall any more idiots like that. Order! Homura yelled as a few civilians began bickering again. They instantly shut up. The Sandaime grinned. Homura would have made a good Hokage, but unfortunately, he wasn't powerful or influential enough. The large screen at the top, behind the Hokage's empty seat flickered to life, revealing the smiling, skinny Fire Daimyo leisurely waving his fan on his face. Hello honorable council members, he said silkily. We are gathered to announce the coming of the next Hokage. The council members murmured and muttered excitedly amongst themselves as the Fire Daimyo continued. Now, are there any suggestions? The Fire Daimyo suddenly promptly waved a hand at Homura lazily, ordering him to continue for him. I nominate Orochimaru of the Sannin, Kaharu said smugly, subtly nodding at Danzo. The Fire Daimyo made a face. Orochimaru. Never liked him. Too much of a meanie. I'm sure he doesn't take a bath either. The council members' sweat dropped as the Fire Daimyo yawned again. The Sandaime frowned. Orochimaru was becoming more distant and mad than ever before. It worried him. I nominate Jiraiya of the Sannin. Shuza declared, sneakily munching on potato chips under the table. Tsume growled at the name. The Fire Daimyo's eyes widened in interest. Oh, excellent choice. I always liked that Jiraiya. But, I don't think that Jiraiya would want to be Hokage. Sarutobi, what do you think? Hiruzen had been giggling, thinking of the orange books that Jiraiya wrote. He placed a finger on his chin thoughtfully. I think you are right, Daimyo-sama. Jiraiya would never take the job. Besides, it is crucial for him to maintain his spy network in these dark times. We don't know who has heard of the Fox's attack, nor do we know who will attack us in our unstable condition. The Fire Daimyo nodded. Any other nominations? Homura asked. I nominate myself to be Hokage in this desperate time. Though I know it will be a burden, I must do my duty as. No Danzo, the Sandaime spoke. Danzo's face darkened as he gritted his teeth in rage. I nominate myself as Hokage since I am the wealthiest lady of the Leaf. Sake Haruno screeched, making everyone wince and rub their ears. Shut up Haruno, Tsume growled. Troublesome, Shikaku yawned. I nominate Hiruzen Sarutobi. The entire room went silent. But the Fire Daimyo clapped his hands joyously. Excellent choice Shikaku-sama. Well Sarutobi-sama, will you resume your duties as Hokage once more? Hiruzen sighed wearily. The R.O.O.M. became still as the council felt the clock ticking away. Danzo silently gnashed his teeth impatiently. Very well, Hiruzen said. I will become Hokage once more. Homura nodded. Does anyone second the motion to place Hiruzen Sarutobi as the Hokage of Konoha? In an instant, almost all the shinobi counselors raised their hands and called out, me. Homura nodded. Very good. Hiruzen Sarutobi, You may take your seat. Hiruzen groaned and walked up to the front and seated himself in the Hokage chair. Am I done now? Yes, finally. The daimyo screamed as the screen blinked out. Hiruzen leaned on his hands, putting his elbows on the desk. Very well. On to our first order of business, he began. The new Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. If the council was nervous and chaotic before, it was nothing compared to right now. Complete chaos issued through the room in a volume that even Sake Haruno couldn't match easily. The Sandaime grumbled in annoyance as he rubbed his forehead, trying to rid himself of his glaring headache. Curse you Tobarama-sensei for creating this council, he thought ruefully. I thought the job of the council was to advise and support the Hokage in these matters. Instead I get these idiots who are making my job 10 times more difficult than before. Silence. The Sandaime shouted. At once, the council room grew quiet. The Sandaime sighed with relief, and nodded at them gratefully. That's much better, he said. Now, one at a time is not two. I'll go first then, Sake Haruno screeched. Since I am obviously the most. Just get to the point, Haruno, Sume snarled. The entire shinobi council sighed with relief as Sake stopped talking about how great she was. The demon should be executed, Sake screamed at the top of her lungs. The Sandaime felt his blood boil in anger. Oh Minato, I hope you know what you have gotten your son into. Yes, kill the demon, the fat council member, Guro, bellowed, sweat dripping from his large mustache. His face was red from the exertion of opening his mouth. All the civilian council members began screaming at once for the demon's death. Suddenly, they abruptly stopped and began to shiver and wheeze, as if a huge weight was crushing them on their backs. The shinobi began to sweat as the Hokage's powerful killer intent laced through every one of them like a spear. The Hokage stood up, a fierce glare adorned his face, and his mouth twisted into a frown. Honestly, he was disappointed in his village. He had even seen some of the shinobi clan leaders joining in the call for Naruto's death. You have no idea what you are saying, do you? Quote, we are saying, silence yourself Sake, the Sandaime whispered darkly. Saki's face went white with fear. This boy is our savior. Do you not realize it? Most of the council members, even the shinobi council members looked at each other in disbelief, wondering if their Hokage had finally lost it. What do you mean Hokage-sama? Inoichi asked curiously. I mean, that the boy's death would only release the Kyuubi once again. Do you really have so little faith in the Yondaime's sealing ability? The shinobi council glanced at one another guiltily, but a majority of the civilian council looked rather indifferent. It's not that we do not trust the Yondaime's sealing ability, Sarutobi, Danzo began. Hiruzen and Homura looked at each other with knowing glances, expecting Danzo to begin something like this. But, Danzo continued, I, for one do not trust this boy to be able to hold the chakra of the strongest of the tailed beasts. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed as the councilors murmured in agreement. Danzo smiled serenely, happy that his plan was going well so far. How about you let me train the boy, Sarutobi, Danzo remarked. I can teach him to keep that foul dirty beast inside him leashed and chained. Hiruzen shook his head immediately. Kill him, one councilor called. Banish him, imprison him, torture the demon for the rest of his miserable life. Sake Haruno finally screamed in outrage. I lost my fourth cousin's wife's friend in that demon's rampage. Several of the shinobi council members' sweat dropped at this, while some, namely Fugaku Uchiha, looked furious. He was one of the few who knew about Naruto's parentage. He didn't like the Yondaime very much, but he respected the man's strength, and owed him his life. He found it insulting for a man who was so great to be mocked in death. The civilians, however, looked horror-struck and very sympathetic to Sake. The fools, the Sandaime snorted. He was only in office for a few minutes and already he was beginning to regret his decision. No, he told himself firmly. I must do this for Naruto, and for Konoha. I must keep them both safe and alive. Silence. Hiruzen bellowed angrily. The other looked at him expectantly. Hiruzen took a deep breath to calm his nerves. It had been too long since he had been Hokage. He had grown soft in those years he wasn't in a position of power. Minato had an uncanny gift for leading the council his side of the argument while simultaneously keeping Saki's rants to a minimum, and foiling Danzo's plans. Hiruzen once had that kind of strength, to some degree. But he was old now. Old and tired. You will all listen to me right now, and listen well for I will not repeat myself. Hiruzen began stiffly. Naruto Uzumaki's Jinchuriki Street. Addis will not be mentioned at all from this day. This will be an S-class secret effective immediately. Anyone who talks of this outside of this room will be put to death instantly. Do I make myself clear? The council nodded, some grave, and some fearful, but others smiling wickedly. Sume Inazuka and Fugaku Uchiha each spoke at the same time. Hokage-sama, Sarutobi, permission to speak. Hiruzen nodded at them wearily. Uchiha-sama, you have permission to speak first. Fugaku nodded and stood up. Sarutobi, he began sternly, I would like to adopt Naruto Uzumaki into my clan. Surprised whispers flew through the room. The civilians were seething in anger. Why would the noble Uchiha clan want to adopt the demon brat? Most of them cursed under their breaths. If Naruto was under the protection of the mighty Uchiha clan, then there was no way they could torture him to their heart's desire. Hiruzen shot Fugaku a warning look. These people didn't know that Naruto was Minato's son, and if Thayer discovered that the noble mighty Uchiha clan had adopted a nobody, they would get suspicious and begin to make a connection. I am sorry, Uchiha-sama, but I am afraid that is impossible, he said sadly. Fugaku nodded understandingly, a disappointed look on his face as well as Hiruzen and Sume's. I am sorry Minato Namikaze. Sume, Hiruzen began. What is it you wished to ask me? Never mind, Hokage-sama. She said sorrowfully. She knew that if the Sandaime refused Naruto to be allowed to be adopted into the Uchiha clan, there was no way he would allow Naruto to be adopted into her own clan. Let me make this clear. The Sandaime growled. If any one of you lays a finger on Naruto, you will answer to me, personally. Is that understood? The civilians went white, but one shinobi grinned, as if amused by the display of power. Furthermore, Naruto will be sent to the local orphanage until I deem him ready to leave. He will always be watched, so don't even consider attacking him. Do you understand? He roared. Yes, Hokage-sama, they chorused nervously. Hiruzen nodded slowly, feeling he had made his point clear. He did not realize at all how wrong he was. Very well, he said slowly. This council meeting is over. We must meet again to discuss the village's condition. I advise that we can't meet again tomorrow. I have to go to the hair salon tomorrow to make my hair even more. As I was saying before I was interrupted, the Sandaime continued, his aura leaking out killer intent. I advise you to heed my words on the matter of Naruto. Instantly he felt anger rise in the room, though no one spoke. I believe that we're done for today, he said placing his cage hat on his head. You are all dismissed. At the Kurama clan compound. That Sake Haruno, grumbled Haru Kurama. Everything about her annoys me. From her Hokage, monument-sized forehead, to her pink hair, to her banshee voice. Sir, you should not be so ill-spoken about a fellow member of the council. Especially one who happens to be the richest woman in Konoha. It's unbecoming of a Kurama clan leader. And I swear, the day she has a daughter will be the day I finally lose it, Haru Kurama finished. Not even listening to his advisor. She already had a daughter, sir. The girl's name is Sakura, and she is about 6 months old. Haru groaned in disbelief. Great, he muttered. She even has an S at the beginning of her name just like her mother. Oh man, I pity the poor idiot who has to deal with both screaming banshees in 10 years. But sir, the advisor protested. Oh, but there is one thing we have in common. Haru remarked sinisterly, his mouth cracking into an insane grin. This mouth stretched wider and wider, until his advisor thought it would split. His eyes one with insanity and madness as his face darkened in rage. It was like he was displaying several emotions at the same time. The advisor looked impassive as though he had seen this many times before. We both despise the demon that the fool, Sarutobi is trying so hard to protect, he finished menacingly. With Kakashi. Rin, are you okay? He asked hesitantly. She wiped a few tears away from her eyes as they both stood at the spot where their sensei had vanished. Quote, first Obito, now Minato sensei, I don't know. She sobbed helplessly. Kakashi put a hand on her shoulder, trying to be emotionless. He looked up at the sky, wondering what exactly had happened. He knew that the Kyuubi was the strongest of the tailed beasts, but he had always pictured his sensei as invincible. Never on CE did he recall his sensei losing a battle. He also had no idea how to make Rin feel better. Even in death, she sobbed angrily. Even in death, the Kyuubi will pay. First Obito, now Minato-sensei, Kakashi mused. How many more will fall in the years to come? With Itachi Uchiha, it's all right Sasuke, the threat has passed, Itachi said gently, wiping away his younger brother's tears. He looked off into the horizon. He felt the sense of doom, but it was gone now. Everything seemed like it would be all right. Sasuke abruptly began to wail again. Itachi looked off towards the Hokage Tower, far in the distance, wondering when his parents would return. He then looked back at Sasuke. Itachi smiled. Now, brother, don't cry, it is your first birthday after all, he said softly, putting his younger brother down into his crib. Don't worry, I'll always be here to protect you, he declared, watching as the red dawn erupted into sunlight. At the Hyuga compound, Hiyashi Hyuga, head of the noble Hyuga clan, stared hopefully at his twin brother Hizashi. Did you do as I asked, Hizashi? Hizashi nodded. Hiyashi sighed wearily. What were the results? He asked, trying to remain emotionless. I am sorry, brother, Hizashi said sadly, but it seems to be as we feared. Hiyashi's pale purple eyes began to shine as he fought not to lose his composure. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His wife, mother of his firstborn daughter, was dying. How long, brother? He asked. How long does she have left to live? Perhaps an hour, perhaps a year. Hizashi replied, his face pointing at the floor. It could be any time, couldn't it? Hiyashi gasped in horror, as he rushed to his wife's room, hoping for the best, but fearing the worst. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi slammed his forehead on his desk in frustration as his assistant continued to bring in piled of paperwork. There were many important things to be signed, such as permission for certain village repairs, permission to investigate various suspicions, permission to execute the demon. Whoops, better reject that one, he mused angrily. Honestly, do these idiot civilians have anything better to do? He wondered. Or the shinobi for that matter, he added, realizing that a few of his shinobi had requested for the demon's execution. He was about to reach for his next stack of paperwork, but just then, the assistant entered. Lord Hokage, she began, bowing. Elders Homura, Kaharu, and Danzo request to speak with you immediately. Demand, more like, he thought. Send them in, he said, hastily clearing his desk of paperwork and stashing the orange book he was about to read under the table. The assistant bowed again and exited the room, only to return with the three elders. Homura, a old gently-looking man, with thick glasses and gray hair. Danzo, a dark-haired man, with shut eyes, a half-mummified body, and a X-shaped scar on his chin. And lastly, Kaharu, a plump, toad-like woman, with unintelligent beady eyes and sagging cheeks that seemed to reach to her shoulders. Lord Hokage, Homura said, the villagers are waiting below the podium for you to speak as our new Hokage. Oharu and Danzo made bitter faces as this, but inclined their heads ruefully. Hiruzen inclined his head and put on his cage hat and garb. He then proceeded to fall into step between his two former mates and old friend as he walked to address the citizens of Konoha. He stood in the shadows behind the curtain as the three elders proceeded to the top of the podium, far above the Leaf Village's heads. Homura took a deep breath, ready to relay the bad news to those who had not heard it. People of Konoha, Homura began, his voice booming and echoing across the village. On this tragic day, we have lost our most powerful friend. Rin began to sob, as Kakashi stared sorrowfully in the distance. He really is dead then, he thought. Minato Namikaze, our fourth Hokage. Our most loyal protector. Our most talented shinobi. You were our key to victory in the Third Great Shinobi War. You were our most trusted friend, our most loyal comrade. No one gave up more for this village than you. Hiruzen nodded, thinking of Naruto. We lay you to rest, Homura finished. Sobs and cries were sounding throughout the entire crowd. Sarutobi smiled sadly. Even Tobirama Senju could not match Minato's legacy. He knew that the fourth Hokage would be remembered forever as the hero who slayed the nine-tailed fox, the strongest of the tailed beasts. The yellow flash of Konoha would live on forever, in their hearts. Cries of the pain of loss echoed in the village below the Hokage Tower. Homura and the other elders closed their eyes, as they prepared for the rest of the speech. But, Homura continued, his voice booming. Out of the darkness, an old light has come back to us. Many of the villagers below looked at each other in surprise. Could he be talking about the arrival of the next Hokage? They whispered to each other excitedly. Hiruzen scowled. He certainly did see himself as an old light. Now, Lord Hokage, lead us in our time of need, Homura declared. Come to us, Hiruzen Sarutobi, third Hokage of the Leaf. The villagers clapped and cheered half-heartedly as Hiruzen revealed himself. Many were still crestfallen at the news of Minato's death. Kushina was never known as Minato's wife. The news was supposed to be revealed when his student Jiraiya returned, but now it was too late. Both were dead, and their son was all alone, with nearly a whole village council hating him. Telling the villagers about Naruto now would only send them into a state of rage. It's too soon after the fox's attack. I must keep Naruto safe for as long as I possibly can. Hiruzen thought as he made his way to the front of the podium to address his village. People of Konoha, it is my greatest honor to your Hokage once again after all these years. However, before we get to the pleasantries, we must address the critical state of our village. Guard must constantly be kept on the other nations, for some will use this out-weakened state as an opportunity to attack. The people of Konoha nodded at each other slowly, noting the grave danger they were in. Hiruzen took a deep breath. Now, he continued, the attack of the nine-tailed fox has left our beloved village in shambles, but there is a bright side. Confused whispers swept through the crowd. How could there a bright side? They wondered. While Minato sacrificed himself to save his village, he also sacrificed himself to do something else. The crowd waited with bated breath as Hiruzen closed his eyes once again and shouted. He brought an end to the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the most powerful of the tailed beasts. The villagers' eyes shot pen-wide with surprise and awe as many began to clap and cheer at the top of their lungs, amazed with the willpower of the fourth Hokage. But Lord Hokage, a shinobi shouted from down below. How did the Yondaime kill a tailed beast? Isn't that impossible? Hiruzen nodded, having prepared to counter this argument. The details are still largely unknown, he announced. But it seems the Yondaime ealed the beast into himself just as he fell, taking the Kyuubi with him to his death. The cheers and claps seemed to raise even higher after hearing this news. Hiruzen smiled hopefully for the crowd, but inwardly he was frowning. After the destruction of the Uzumaki clan, there wasn't a nation alive that could deduce his lie. No one but the Sannin could possibly guess what he was saying was fake. Due to them being taught by Minato himself. Hiruzen smiled even wider to make sure he appeared happy with the results, even though he wasn't. What he really wanted was to go to sleep reading his orange book. And let his old bones rest for a bit. Now, he continued, smiling pleasantly. The attack of the Kyuubi has nearly destroyed our village, but, as demonstrated by your fourth Hokage, the will of fire still lives on. Burning bright and strong, in you. The cheers and claps escalated, until nothing else could be heard. Hiruzen grinned. This was what he loved about Konoha. Their fiery determination to push them forward through anything. Kakashi and Rin clapped along with the other glumly, not even paying attention to the sympathetic looks being sent their way from their comrades. They had just lost their sensei. And even though they discovered the Kyuubi was dead, they could not find a reason to be happy. Not today, at least. Not for a long time. Lies, a voice whispered. Everyone immediately felt the effects of a genjutsu settle over them. A genjutsu meant to inform others, and not to harm them. Hiruzen though, alarmed. I can't dispel it, though, there is only one clan with the capability to use such a genjutsu. Hiruzen thought grimly. The Kurama clan. Damn, Hiruzen cursed as he felt the genjutsu settle into every mind of the Leaf Village. This is not good, Hiruzen thought. I knew I should have kept closer watch on the council members. And out of all the counselors it had to be a shinobi like him, he thought ruefully. One who has lost all his Junin, and nearly all his Chunin in the attack. Damn you, Haru Kurama. Lies. Rin asked, confused. What does that mean? What is the Sandaime lying to us about, and why? That's what I'm wondering, Kakashi remarked. This genjutsu is particularly powerful, he thought. I can't dispel it no matter what I do, and judging from the frustrated looks on the podium, I bet the Hokage isn't having any luck either. This is bad, and only the Kurama clan is capable of such a feat. What could be so important that someone would disobey a secret order from the Hokage, and go through all this trouble just to tell us? Maybe it has something to do with the council. If so, then maybe Asuma knows something about this. Hey Asuma, Kakashi asked, turning to him. He froze when he saw Asuma's white face. Asuma was shaking his head, mumbling. Oh no, this is very bad. What's very bad, Asuma? Kakashi asked loudly. Asuma jumped a mile as he was shaken out of his thoughts. He stared hard at Kakashi as if sizing him up. You'll find out soon enough. He finally replied grimly. Just don't act too rashly when you do. Kakashi looked back to the podium to the Hokage's furious and helpless expression as the voice continued menacingly. All lies. The Kyuubi never died that night, the voice continued. Multiple gasps of horror issued throughout the crowd. Kakashi's mind was reeling. The Kyuubi never died that night. He thought frantically. But that means... He looked over to Rin where he saw that she had a furious look on her face. You beloved old man Hokage has been lying to you all along, the voice snarled. The Yondaime did not kill the Kyuubi that night because he couldn't. No one can kill a tailed beast. He was a master of seals. He knew that if he sealed the beast in himself, the Kyuubi would escape as he died. So he did the next best thing. The voice paused dramatically, then roared in rage. He sealed the Kyuubi in a newborn baby, making it the Kyuubi's demon incarnate. This boy will be our downfall. As shinobi, we must finish our noble Yondaime's work and slay the child, just as he would have wanted, to avenge our fallen comrades. The entire crowd was silent, shocked by the turn of events. Kakashi and Rin subtly nodded at each other, knowing what they had to do. They slowly slipped away from the crowd to prepare to do what had to be done. In the name of Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi closed his eyes, wishing he was dead. Already the villagers were being awoken from their shocked state, and already, many were calling for Naruto's death. For the first time in his life, he had absolutely no idea what to do. He turned helplessly to the elders, who all were sporting different expressions. Homura's face was grim, while Kaharu and Danzo wore triumphant grins on their faces. What should we do, Hiruzen? Homura asked gravely. I don't know, Hiruzen said, panicking. There were several things he could do, but at the moment, he was clueless. He had hidden Naruto away in his compound, being watched over by his daughter-in-law, and the rest of his most loyal clansmen, but he knew that Naruto's location would not remain hidden for long. Sarutobi, may I have a word with you? Hiruzen whipped around, surprised to hear Danzo's voice. He nodded as he followed Danzo behind the curtains of the Hokage Tower's podium. Do you know where it is? Rin whispered harshly. Kakashi nodded in response. He knew that for the demon to be safe, the Sandaime would trust no one but himself to ensure that. Kakashi then guessed that the demon was being watched over at the Sandaime's own compound, the Sarutobi compound. Rin and Kakashi body flickered out of sight, reappearing in front of the Sarutobi compound. The gates were locked and the chains were fastened. Typical, Kakashi muttered. In an instant, he stealthily leapt over the gate, closely followed by Rin. They kept to the shadows, concealing their chakra as much as they could. They hardly spoke as they ran, but Kakashi knew how Rin was feeling. If their sensei really did want them to finish his work of disposing of the Kyuubi, then they had to do it. With, or without the Hokage's permission. The Sarutobi compound was not the fanciest compound. Nor was it the most grand, but it was cozy looking, with smoke rising from chimney tops, and medium-sized warm homes, like a real place to relax after a long day. Rin seethed in rage as they grew closer and closer to where the demon hid. She knew what she had to do. She knew she had to slay it, to avenge her sensei, to avenge all that had fallen that day in that demon's attack. They abruptly stopped outside the Sarutobi compound's main house. Kakashi gripped Rin's shoulders and pulled her back from the doorway, just as two Sarutobi clansmen stepped out. Kakashi looked at Rin directly in her eyes, filled with rage and sorrow. Rin, he said gently, I think you and I both know, that if we do this, we must not kill any of the Sarutobi clansmen. They are still our comrades. Rin hesitated, looking like she wanted to refuse, but slowly, she nodded. You're right, Kakashi. They are probably under the demon's influence. We have to stop this madness, before it's too late. Kakashi inclined his head and peeked through the doorway. There were 5 of the Sarutobi clan standing guard over a small cradle. He turned back to Rin, pointing upwards. She nodded, and they both scaled the side of the house, applying chakra to their feet. Finally, they reached the roof. Kakashi's head darted around nervously, watching for anyone who would try to stop them. Kakashi took a deep breath and pulsed chakra into his palm. The sound of chirping birds filled the area as he whispered, Chidori. Lightning danced on his palm as he raised a hand, and sliced through the ceiling. The Sarutobi clan members glanced up in surprise, only to watch as a ton of debris fell on top of their heads. Kakashi grinned, despite himself. He had aimed just for the people guarding it, with just an amount of debris to knock the shinobi out. He and Rin leapt through the opening in the ceiling and landed on the ground silently, eyeing the crib in the center warily. Kakashi and Rin walked over to the covered crib, and readied themselves to finish what their sensei started. Kakashi readied a Chidori in his other hand, while Rin gripped her kunai as Kakashi's hand gripped the edge of the cloth, and flung it upwards, uncovering what lay underneath. What is it you wished to speak to me about, Danzo? Hiruzen said coldly. He had long since abandoned calling Danzo a friend, ever since he discovered the inner workings of his now disbanded root division. To tell you to get a grip, Sarutobi, Danzo said curtly, as if talking about the weather. These are your people. You are the Hokage. Take control of the situation and demand them to follow your orders, as they should. Get a grip, he finished, almost angrily. Hiruzen stared, open-mouthed, at the elder. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Danzo to give him a morale boost. Nevertheless, this is why Tobirama-sensei did not choose you to be Hokage, my very old friend, he sighed gently. Force will not solve anything. Listen to what I am saying, Sarutobi. Danzo snapped angrily. I never told you to use force now, did I? I know you are too much of a soft-hearted fool to resort to such things. No, I am telling you to demand them to obey your orders. You are the Hokage, and as Hokage, they must obey you whether they wished or not. It is the law. They may hate you for it, but it is the right thing to do, until the boy himself proves his worth to them. It's the best choice to make right now. The right choice, is it not, Sandaime Hokage? Hiruzen stared at his old friend, shocked. Never had Danzo acknowledged him as Hokage. And never did he help him in any kind of way. If Danzo of all people is telling me how to govern my village, then there really must be something wrong with me, Hiruzen thought. He slowly lifted his arm, and placed a hand on Danzo's shoulder. Thank you, old friend, he said sincerely. Danzo huffed and knocked off Hiruzen's hand from his shoulder angrily. He began to walk away, but suddenly, he stopped, and turned around. He was grinned slyly. Just because I assisted you this time, Sarutobi, don't expect a second time. Oh. And you just wait. I'll turn the boy into my weapon no matter what. You is a reason I want him alive. You know. He knew Hiruzen had seen through his plan from the very start. Just try it, Danzo, Hiruzen growled, though, on the inside he was grinning. He was ready to help Naruto, however he could. I only wish things were as simple as they were back then. Danzo, Tobirama-sensei, Homura, Kaharu, Kagami, he thought sadly as he stepped briskly to the front of the podium, watching tensely as mobs were beginning to form. Kakashi flung the cloth back, uncovering what lay underneath. He and Rin's eyes unfocused as they gave into their rage, and plunged their weapons down, and froze. Rin grinned maliciously as her hand continued to plunge downward, until she felt hand stop her wrist. Rin stared wide-eyed at the one who denied her revenge. Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi, what are you doing? She hissed in rage. Kakashi's body was shaking as he stared at what lay underneath the blanket. It was a baby boy with blonde hair, and a round pudgy face, with whisker marks, and a soft, gentle smile as he slept peacefully, blissfully unaware of the peril he was in. Naruto dreamed of his ceiling. This isn't right, Kakashi managed. Rin furrowed her brows at him angrily. Her face grew darker and darker as she thought of all the shinobi who died that night. What do you mean? Don't tell me you're going soft, Kakashi. We must finish this. The demon must die, Rin demanded, spittle flying from her mouth, and her normally gentle eyes filled with endless rage and madness. Kakashi whipped around to face her. No, this is not right, he declared, more forcefully. Rin snarled as he tightened his hold on her wrist. Let me ask you this, Rin, Kakashi said, his voice dangerously calm. Would Sensei ever execute a child? Think, even if it were Madara Uchiha, reborn as an infant. Do you think he would do it? That doesn't sound like the Sensei I know. Let go of me, Rin demanded. No, Kakashi declared. He looked back at Naruto hesitantly. Sensei would give the child a second chance. That's the Sensei I know. We're leaving, Rin. Kakashi growled as Rin tried to use her free hand to stab the boy with a kunai hidden in her sleeve. Not you too, Kakashi, she screamed insanely. It has you under its spell, just like the Sandame. I must slay it before. That's enough, Kakashi growled. He and Rin disappeared in a swirl of leaves. There was a moment of silence. Suddenly, a lone figure stepped out of the shadows, staring at the sky through the hole Kakashi's Chidori had made. I knew I had the right instinct to trust you, Kakashi, Asuma laughed quietly. Your sensei would be proud. At the Hokage Tower, people of Konoha, the Sandame shouted. The chaos did not cease below. Hiruzen gritted his teeth in anger. Stop, he shouted powerfully, his voice lacing with powerful killer intent. The civilians and genin coughed and wheezed under the pressure. Everyone instantly froze as the Hokage snatched Homura's cane from his han. DS and slammed it on the ground in front of him, creating a powerful boom. You are the people of the Hidden Leaf Village, among the most powerful of the 5 hidden villages. Act like it, he thundered murderously, making even the Junin cringe under the power of his voice. You will listen to me right now, he said tightly. You will not speak of this incident again. You will not mention it to anyone else. Not your children, not your families, and especially not any foreigners. Anyone who dares disobey me will be executed immediately, regardless of who they are. Am I understood? The villagers, hesitantly, slowly began to bow their heads, in inclination. This will be an S-class secret. The Sandame shouted. And, as for the one who revealed this, the crowd waited with bated breath. Haru Kurama of the Shinobi Council is now an S-class criminal of Konoha, and will be executed immediately. The same fate awaits any who disobey this law. This meeting is over, the Sandame finished. The Sandame has become a victim of the Kyuubi's mind control. We must slay the beast now, a nameless Chunin yelled idiotically. Suddenly, he gasped in surprise as the Sandame appeared directly in front of him. Let me make this perfectly clear, the Sandame growled angrily through his gritted teeth. If any of you hurt Naruto, you will answer to me. His fist shot out and slammed the Chunin into the wall. The Chunin's eyes rolled into his head, as he slumped unconscious. Take him to Ibiki, the Sandame said emotionlessly. The then turned around and body flickered to the top podium. Homura tapped his foot impatiently on the ground, holding out his hand. Hiruzen grinned sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head, and handed Homura back his cane. Sorry about that, he said, grinning. But I needed to make a point. You know. Homura rolled his eyes, but a faint smile was gracing his features. You never will change, will you, Hiruzen? He muttered as they disappeared behind the curtain. In the execution chamber. Haru Kurama, you are charged with revealing an S-class secret issued directly by the 3rd Hokage. How do you plead? Guilty. Haru grinned maliciously through his bloody lip and face. I was happy to cause the demon some harm before someone else ends his miserable life. Now, I can rest in peace, knowing that, in some way, I have avenged my comrades. If you're quite done, the executioner growled. He lifted his battle axe high over Haru's neck. Haru laughed maniacally until the axe landed, splitting his head from his body. Haru's face was frozen, in a mid-laugh, as though he still was happy with a small taste of revenge. A small girl watched sadly, through her mind. She watched as her uncle was killed. Why must it end this way? She cried in rage. Why? Suddenly, she stopped crying as her eyes snapped open. She clutched her bedsheets in rage, as she thought of what had transpired. She closed her eyes and vowed that she, Yakumo Kurama, Would find the demon who was the cause of the death of her family, and end him. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen rubbed his face wearily as he warily studied the stacks of paperwork in front of him. He sighed as he stared out the window, at the morning sun. He yawned absent-mindedly. Maybe I'll just finish this up tomorrow, he thought wistfully, wishing he were asleep. Still struggling with that damned paperwork, sensei. Hiruzen's eyes shot wide open in surprise as he saw his student, Jiraiya, his back leaning against the doorway. Jiraiya's white hair was as long as ever, with red line tattoos on his cheeks and a scroll on his back. Jiraiya, you're here, Hiruzen exclaimed. He looked at Jiraiya curiously. And you didn't come through the window, he realized. Jiraiya's grin became a seriously grave frown as he stared at Hiruzen. Jiraiya, what have you found out? Hiruzen asked immediately. Jiraiya slammed the door, and sealed it. He turned back to Hiruzen with a troubled look on his face. We've got trouble, he said finally. What is it now? Hiruzen said wearily, rubbing his forehead. Bad things seemed to be happening, one after another. Just when he felt like things were calming down, Jiraiya returned. Announcing an approaching storm, so to speak. Hiruzen suspected it would be a while before things would start to calm down again. But, for now, he watched nervously. As Jiraiya spread seals all over the office. He hadn't seen his former student this worried since the Third Great Shinobi War. And the way he was sealing everything he could lay his hands on, it was not comforting in the least. He deftly cleared his desk of paperwork, and clasped his hands together, with his elbows on his desk, watching as his student sealed the window shut. He stared at Hiruzen, as if sizing him up. Dismiss your Anbu, he said finally. Oh, of course, I nearly forgot, Hiruzen said absent-mindedly. He waved his hand, and instantly, there were several swishing NDS as Jiraiya temporarily unsealed a barrier to allow the Anbu to exit the Hokage's office. Jiraiya bowed his head, as he fought to form words. He held up a hand. First of all, a question, he said. Hiruzen nodded slowly, knowing exactly what Jiraiya was going to ask. As Minato. Yes, Jiraiya, Hiruzen said solemnly. I am sorry. Don't be, Jiraiya whispered, back turned. He got his wishes fulfilled in life. He became a powerful Hokage. He married Kushina. He has a wonderful son. Hiruzen's eyes shot open in alarm. How do you know about that? He nearly shouted, rising from his chair. Jiraiya did not answer him. Hiruzen was shaking. How could you know that? He said, shocked. How did you know that Naruto survived? Jiraiya closed his eyes, and turned to face his old sensei. Hiruzen's eyes widened as he watched a tear escape from Jiraiya's closed eye. We have a leak in our village, sensei. Jiraiya said mournfully. If my spy network was able to discover Naruto's identity, that means someone else knows as well. And the secret is out. Naruto will never have a normal life now. Hiruzen snarled as he thought of anyone who would dishonor the Yondaime so much as to reveal his only son. Who could have done this? He roared angrily, smashing his fist into the wall. Jiraiya did not answer. Hiruzen whirled on him. And how can you say that he will not have a normal life now? We can still protect him. And if the rest of the villager are still unaware, then the person who knows the secret of Naruto's parentage is keeping it to himself. All hope is not lost. You don't get it, do you, sensei? Jiraiya shouted. Hiruzen blinked. Even if only one person knows of the last Namikaze in existence, there is a reason he would keep it to himself. Hiruzen leaned forward curiously. To keep Naruto for himself. Hiruzen's eyes widened in surprise. You know who is responsible. He breathed. Who? He said again sharply. After a moment's hesitation, Jiraiya answered. One who will not hesitate to use Naruto as his own experiment. Hiruzen gasped audibly, then whipped around to face the window. My student, you really have fallen far, haven't you? Orochimaru. Don't you see it now? Jiraiya snapped. Orochimaru is crafty. If revealing Naruto means to his advantage, he will undoubtedly do so. Hiruzen's eyes widened in alarm. He could reveal Naruto to Kumo or Iwa if it meant an alliance, he realized. Jiraiya nodded sadly. But, that's not all, sensei. What else is there? Hiruzen asked worriedly. Have you ever heard of a group called the Akatsuki? Akatsuki. Hiruzen muttered, stroking his chin thoughtfully. No, I don't believe I have. Jiraiya swallowed nervously. They are a newly formed group in the Hidden Rain village that are dedicated to keeping the peace. To end war and suffering. Hiruzen smiled softly. That sounds like a noble and worthy cause. He looked to Jiraiya and frowned when he saw Jiraiya shaking his head. They are also after the Biju, he whispered fearfully. I fear for Naruto's safety. Hiruzen rubbed his head. One problem after another. That's what was happening right now. Don't you see, Sensei, Jiraiya said, clenching his fists. He must begin his training early if he has any chance of surviving all of these threats. This is what I meant when I said that he will never have a normal life. And, it's all my fault. The life of a shinobi is not meant for a child. I don't even know if he will be able to handle it. Hiruzen blinked confusedly. Then he turned around and looked sadly out the window. It was true then. Hiruzen sighed helplessly. Naruto's life was not going to be easy, but he swore that he would do everything in his power to make the boy live life to its fullest. Jiraiya had a solemn look on his face as he stared mournfully at the Hokage monument. If only I had been there, he thought angrily, digging his fingernails into his palm. If only I had been there, so Minato could live, and Naruto would end. Bear this burden of being Konoha's sacrifice, Konoha's weapon, Konoha's Jinchuriki. When, Jiraiya? Hiruzen asked seriously, breaking Jiraiya away from his thoughts. What can we do? How many are there? When will the Akatsuki strike? Quote. Jiraiya shook his head dejectedly. I have no idea, Sensei, he admitted frustratedly. Hanzo of the Salamander has sealed the Hidden Rain's borders. Even my spy network cannot pierce it. And, worst of all, I cannot infiltrate the rain now without triggering another war. In our weakened state, Hanzo would wipe us out in a matter of minutes. Plus, he is much too powerful for me to handle without the backup of Tsunade. He stopped, and breathed raggedly. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. Naruto's enemies are slowly rising, he said, sitting back down on his chair. All of them, much too soon. Are fast, first to deal with them all at the same time. We must focus on the here and now. We must find out what enemy is currently in out view, and end him. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Hiruzen got up from his chair again and stared at Jiraiya hard. The Akatsuki are a problem we must extinguish later. For now, we must set our sights on Orochimaru, he finished difficultly. If we let him go, he will reveal Naruto to the hidden stone, and be in danger once more. For now, Orochimaru must be captured, alive, or dead. Jiraiya jutted out his jaw, his resolve strengthened. As he closed his eyes. Okay, he agreed. What's the plan? Hiruzen lowered his head sadly. This was his duty, to eliminate his former student. Orochimaru, why? 5 hours later, sunset, top of Hokage monument. Jiraiya sat atop the head of his old student as he dangled his legs over the side of the Hokage monument. He looked towards the setting sun, smiling slightly as he watched it. Suddenly, he gasped, and whipped out his long-range telescope at the direction of the hot springs at the far end of the village, giggling at what he saw. You will never change, will you, Jiraiya? Jiraiya pouted childishly and removed his eye from his telescope to see his former sensei with an identical telescope, giggling perversely. Neither will you, Sarutobi-sensei. Jiraiya said lightly, placing his elbows on his knees. They both sighed as they looked at the darkening clouds above. Orochimaru's betrayal had hit them quite hard, but they were not the only ones. Elsewhere, a small, 6-year-old girl with purple hair was sobbing quietly under her blanket. Both Jiraiya and Hiruzen acted nonchalantly, but truthfully, they were both hurting inside. They could not believe how far their former comrade had fallen over the years. Jiraiya recalled what his former teammate had said to them before he escaped along with his new group. A young, white-haired boy with pale skin, a dark-haired girl with a tough attitude, and a burly man with huge muscles and a huge club. This foolish village will fall, mark my words. Your little Jinchuriki will never have another peaceful moment in his life. Minato Namikaze will rue the day he ever had a child. I will burn this wretched village to the ground, mark my words, Hokage. So, where is Naruto going to go now? Jiraiya wondered. I am planning to send him to Konoha's orphanage for the time being, Hiruzen replied, taking out his pipe. Jiraiya made a face, but nodded reluctantly, understanding that little Naruto did not need an why more attention drawn to himself than necessary. You watch him, sensei, Jiraiya warned. Now that the damn Kurama has revealed Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki, I have no doubt in my mind that they will try to break him as much as they possibly can under the radar. Hiruzen nodded, tired, then furrowed his brow. You mean, you won't be staying then? No, Jiraiya announced, standing up. I have to keep my sights on Orochimaru and the Akatsuki as much as I possibly can. I also have to check up on the other villages to make sure they won't try anything. Hiruzen nodded sadly. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Will you return? He asked, blowing smoke from his pipe. Jiraiya shrugged, then turned to sling his large scroll over his shoulder. Remember Jiraiya, Hiruzen called out to Jiraiya's retreating form. He will need you. Quote. Jiraiya froze, and his shoulders stooped a little. Then he turned around and nodded at Hiruzen, smiling sadly, knowing that the road ahead for Naruto was not going to be easy. Hiruzen grinned at the giggling infant in his hands as he knocked on the door of Konoha's orphanage. I'll be right there, a muffled voice called from inside. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a large plump woman moved herself sideways through the door. Ah, good day, Lord Hokage, she bubbled uselessly, as she caught herself before nearly tripping over her own feet. Good day, Cho, Hiruzen said warmly. Cho was an old friend of his from back in the academy days, but she was now retired. I have a new addition, he said happily, holding out the baby to her. She grinned playfully, exposing her buck teeth. As the baby squirmed from her stare, I will be happy to take in this little one, Lord Hokage, she said joyously. He pushed the baby into her arms. What is his name? Hiruzen smiled. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied. She smiled again as she handed the baby to one of the nurses and led Hiruzen into her office for him to sign the paperwork. Hiruzen looked around, grinning a little. This is it, he mused. This is Naruto's lucky break. The one place I can be sure he will be safe. He smiled at Cho as he signed the last of the papers. He faced the looming orphanage proudly. Naruto, you are in good hands. Good luck to you, my boy. With that, he turned and walked away slowly. Cho watched him go from the window, a menacing sneer on her pudgy face. That old fool, Hiruzen, she muttered ferociously. My son is gone because of this demon he has forced me to care for, she sobbed slowly. Suddenly, she froze and glared at the newborn wailing in the corner. She slowly walked over to him. Her hands clenched in fists. Naruto began to wail louder as she approached, sensing her hostility. Hiruzen Sarutobi, she murmured, as she raised a kunai above the baby's face. You have just made the biggest mistake of your life. 2 years later, Konoha Orphanage. Boy, a nurse spat venomously. Clear this up, now. The boy turned around. He was small, as 2-year-olds usually are, with spiky blonde hair that was filled with dirt, and deep icy blue eyes. He wore a dirtied orange sweater that seemed several sizes too big, and a pair of jeans that barely reached his ankles. His gentle face was smudged with grime, covering the 3 whisker marks on his face, and his small hands were black with soot. He had been working all day, and nearly all night, since the day he could walk. This boy was Naruto. He had never known love or friendship of any kind. Though he was a 2-year-old, his eyes spoke his true age, as though he had lived longer. He had suffered from hunger, wounds, and severe isolation from the rest of the children. Even if he tried to talk to any of them, they turned away from him. Naruto had already guessed that the nurses told them to not play with him at all. He had no idea why. Well, did you hear me, boy? The nurse demanded. Clean it up. Naruto gave her an icy stare, but his face remained emotionless as he obeyed her without a word. A small smile suddenly gracing his features. This confused the nurses a great deal. They had absolutely no idea why he smiled. Eventually, they came to the conclusion that the demon was trying to get them to lower their guard. The Hokage had visited Naruto from time to time, and during that time, the entire orphanage treated him like he was a prince. They constantly threw off the Anbu watch, hing him with support from the Kurama clan. Naruto swept the floor as he wordlessly observed to other children watching him. None of them were doing work, but he did not complain. There must be a reason they hate me so much, he thought sadly. Whatever I did, I hope I can make them like me. Suddenly, he glanced at the calendar, and gasped. The nurse heard and turned to look at what he was looking at. She grinned menacingly at him as the arm holding to broom began to shake lightly. He began to breathe to calm his nerves. It was his birthday, the worst day of his life. He began to remember things from an early age. Only 2 other times this had happened, and both times were days he nearly died. You can do it, Naruto, he told himself firmly, steadying his trembling body. Be strong. Here is a good reason they are doing this. I just wish I knew what it is though. Who am I, and what did I do to make them hate me this way? Naruto closed his eyes, wondering when they would finally accept him. With a low sigh, he swept up the remaining vomit on the ground in front of him. Why did you stop? Filth, a deep voice boomed. Naruto's eyes widened in slight fear as he turned to see a fat, man-like woman looming over him like a huge mammoth. I'm sorry, Cho-sama, he whispered, bowing. She sneered at him with her rounded teeth and grabbed his head with one hand, fiercely pushing it down and digging her long filthy nails into his head. Bow lower, you dog, and don't talk. You are not worthy to speak my name, much less to speak any other words. Naruto winced as he felt one of her nails pierce his head, drawing blood. She grinned as she felt him flinch. She flung him backwards with one hand, watching with satisfaction as his small body slammed into the wall, where he lay limply, trying to ignore his aching head and body. Take him to the bath, she said, wrinkling her nose. God knows he needs one. Prepare him for the Hokage's arrival. We cannot mess this up, understand? The nurses nodded frantically. Naruto did not smell, but he had to be presentable for the Hokage. It was the drill for Naruto's birthday. After the Hokage has his fun, then our real fun will begin, she said, grinning at him. Naruto closed his eyes as he willed himself not to shudder. Well, at least, the old man doesn't hate me. He's probably the only one who doesn't. But, I wish I knew why. Hiruzen hummed happily, unaware of Naruto's peril as he stacked and filed the last of his paperwork for the day. He looked out the window to the shining sun, smiling happily. He was going to see Naruto today. The boy was a joy. He was so kind, so respectful, and very happy, from what Hiruzen could tell. He felt had made the right decision to hand him over to Cho. For once, he felt he had done something right. The village had recovered from the Kyuubi's attack, though parts of Konoha still carried deep scars. There was no word from Jiraiya, but Hiruzen wasn't worried. If Jiraiya hadn't returned, it probably meant that their enemies had yet to make their move. Things were looking up. Suddenly, Hiruzen frowned as he remembered what Jiraiya had told him before he left. Naruto could not remain a child forever. It was a shame to begin to boys training when he was so young. Though he supposed it would still be a few years until that happened. In fact, Hiruzen had a feeling that very soon, Naruto would need to begin his training, and this saddened him. He wanted to shield the boy from harm forever, but he knew he could not do that. He knew that sooner or later, he would have to rag Naruto out of the protective shell he had created for the boy. It was only a matter of time. Little did Hiruzen know that Naruto had already broken out of that shell the day he was born. Naruto stared at himself in the mirror. Shocked, he did not look one bit like himself. His clothes were all fresh and clean, white and blue. His face was almost shining. He looked more like a noble than a peasant. Don't enjoy this generously bestowed gift too much, demon, Cho bellowed from behind him. And remember, act like you are happy, and you love it here, or you'll get such a beating. He nodded slowly. Even if he told the old man, what could he do about it? It wasn't like he had the power to stop it. Or so Naruto thought. Cho snarled at him for good measure and slipped sideways through the door. Naruto took a deep breath and stepped outside after her. As the sunlight shone on him, he saw the old man, pushing his way through the orphanage gate. He felt a smile on his face. A real smile. He loved the old man more than anyone. Hiruzen grinned when he saw Cho with her arm wrapped around little soon-to-be 3 Naruto. Hello, my boy, he said, grinning warmly. Hey old man, Naruto whispered, smiling softly. Hiruzen nodded at Cho as he offered a hand to Naruto, who quickly took it. Naruto looked behind him to see Cho giving him a threatening stare. He closed his eyes, as he realized that there was no way to avoid what was going to happen after this was all over. Naruto snuggled contentedly in the Hokage's arms as the sun dipped low over the hill. It was sunset, and Naruto had grown tired, his little legs refusing to carry him any longer. Luckily, the Sandaime quickly picked the small boy up as he walked. Naruto sighed inwardly. He felt safe with the old man carrying him. He felt something else, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Some emotion that he had no idea what to make of. It had been a wonderful birthday for Naruto. He was 3 now. Hiruzen had taken him to a fancy restaurant, but he discovered that Naruto smelled something else nearby. It turned out to be a delicious ramen shop, with a nice old man and his daughter running it. Hiruzen had watched, amused, as Naruto gulped down the ramen at impressive speeds. The boy was so much like his parents. Hiruzen smiled fondly at Naruto as he yawned tiredly. The shopping bags that they were supposed to be carrying were left to the Anbu. And Hiruzen's birthday present to the boy was hidden up his sleeve. He had decided to give Naruto his present tomorrow, seeing as how the boy could barely stand after such a long day. Hiruzen stopped outside the orphanage gate. Cho watched from inside, seething at the kindness that the Sandaime was showing to Naruto. That old fool, she thought angrily. That demon doesn't deserve kindness. Least of all from the Hokage. It's good the boy doesn't know just how powerful that old man is. The Kyuubi must have taken over his mind. Someday I kill the boy, and save all of Konoha. Someday. She was shaken out of her musings as Hiruzen gently shook the boy, waking him up. Naruto looked curiously at the old man. On their trip, he realized something. Whenever someone came up to the old man, they bowed to him and showed him respect. Why, though? Naruto thought curiously. Why is everyone nice to the old man? What's his secret? Cho brushed sideways through the front door and watched angrily as the demon looked up at Hiruzen. Hey, old man. Yes, what is it, Naruto? Hiruzen asked. Why does everyone like you so much, old man? Is it 'cause you're old? Hiruzen threw his head back and laughed, while Cho clenched her meaty fist in rage. No, my boy, he said through his chuckles. It's not just because I am old. Cho's eyes widened as she realized what Hiruzen was about to do. She grinned, as she thought of something else. The demon wouldn't dare tell him anything while I am around. I am respected throughout the Leaf Village because I am the Hokage, the leader of the village. As the most powerful ninja, and chosen by the village council. Naruto, do you see that rock monument over there? He said, pointing to the Hokage monument in the far distance. Naruto followed his pointing hand. You mean the one with the faces on it? Hiruzen nodded. All those are the Hokages that came before, and after me, he finished sadly. Naruto furrowed his brow in confusion. After you, old man. I can see your face, but whose face is the one after? Hiruzen smiled serenely, looking up at the sky. He was the greatest of all the Hokages. He was once a prodigy, and later, the key to victory in the war. He achieved his dream to be Hokage, but sadly, his time as Hokage was cut short. He sacrificed himself to kill the nine-tailed fox, the most powerful monster you'll ever see. We will always remember him for that. Naruto looked up at the fourth's face in awe. He looked so young, yet his gaze held so much power, even as a stone statue. Old man, Naruto said softly. Do you think I could ever be that cool one day? Hiruzen grinned and ruffled Naruto's hair. I have no doubt in my mind, he said. Naruto grinned back, but then, he began to frown. Old man, he began hesitantly. Hiruzen looked at him. Naruto breathed deeply. He froze as he saw Cho lick the kunai in her hand from behind Hiruzen. Yes, it's nothing, old man, thanks for taking me places today. Hiruzen frowned at Naruto's sudden change in attitude, but smiled anyway, and gave the boy a hug. Naruto closed his eyes as he felt warmth envelop him like a blanket. This emotion, what is it? I have never felt this before. See you later, old man, Naruto whispered sadly as he watched him go. Naruto was terrified. It was exactly like before. It was just like the nightmare that was his second birthday. He squeezed his eyes shut as he slowly shuffled forward towards the open doorway, as Cho's eyes pierced into his skull with a glare. Hurry it up, savage, she threatened, her fat lips curving into a malicious smile. Naruto gritted his teeth as he shuffled agonizingly through the hallway as a trail of blood followed in his wake. As soon as Hiruzen had left, Cho had taken the pleasurable opportunity to stab him in the stomach, where she knew that as was the most agonizing on the victim as well as the most malicious way to kill. Naruto did not cry. He was afraid, but he resolved not to cry. Crying wouldn't help him get out of this situation, so he wouldn't do it. Naruto closed his eyes, steeling his nerves as he stopped in front of a door. His hand slowly went to the doorknob. "Hurry up, demon," Cho screeched. Naruto screamed in pain as she embedded the kunai below his neckline and dragged it down his back, puncturing and tearing his flesh, until there was nothing left but a bloody mess. Naruto gasped in pain as she slowly wrenched the kunai from his back, staining the walls with his blood. "I'm not going to cry," he whispered, grabbing his face. "I'm not going to cry." At the Uchiha compound, Itachi, a woman's voice called. A young boy with raven black hair and red eyes promptly froze in a taijutsu stance. His back hair touched his neck, and framed the side of his face. A one-tomo Sharingan blazed in his eyes. And, a genin headband was tied on his forehead. "Yes, mother," he called back. "Someone from school is outside." "I think it's Izuna," she said. Itachi's solemn face brightened a bit. "All right, I'm coming," he replied, scrambling towards the front door. Makoto Uchiha watched her son lovingly as he rushed to the front door with the enthusiasm of a child. Though her eldest child was more static and emotionless, he was still a child. A prodigy with the first to master the Sharingan. "Hey Itachi, what's up?" Itachi smiled gently at his enthusiastic friend. Izuna was about the same height as Itachi with a masculine handsome face with no baby fat, dark brown eyes, raven black hair that cascaded down his mid-back. They were once both in the same class. Both were 8-year-old prodigies. But while Izuna was excelling in the Shinobi Academy, Itachi had already passed his genin exam, and unlocked his Sharingan, having been the youngest to do so in decades. "So what's up Itachi? Haven't seen you around in a while. How's Sasuke doing? Did you do any cool missions lately? Are you already a Chunin? Come on man, tell me the details." Itachi laughed. As Izuna began to bombard him with questions. Though, it was true that he hadn't seen anyone apart from his family in nearly 2 months. "To answer all your questions. Yeah, I'm okay, but I've been training for so long. Preparing for the Chunin exams." "Yeah, that's great," Izuna exclaimed. Itachi nodded solemnly. "But, this year the Chunin exams are in the Mist Village." Izuna's cheerful face slowly morphed into a frown. "That's not good at all," he said seriously. "An exam in the Bloody Mist is nothing to laugh about. So, that's why you've been so distant and isolated lately. This is gonna be a lot of pressure." Itachi nodded, a bit worried. "You think you and your team are up for it?" "I guess so," Itachi replied. "Isamu, Mito, and I are all from noble clans, but you never know." Izuna whistled in awe and snapped his fingers. "That's right. Isamu and Mito are both from the near-extinct Senju clan. And, you're of the Uchiha clan. Cool, all 3 of you are from the 2 most powerful clans in the Leaf. Don't those 2 have an older brother? What was his name?" "Raiden, right," Itachi nodded. "Raiden's team is sitting it out this year. But, I hear that Raiden carries the wood-release bloodline." Dad sure wasn't happy to hear that. Izuna laughed. "Yeah, I guess the old geezer would be upset that one of the last of the Senju has the might of Hashirama." "What old geezer?" A deep voice boomed from behind them. Izuna froze as he slowly turned his neck. Fugaku glared heatedly at Izuna, making him shiver. He gave Itachi a nervous chuckle. "Well, Itachi old pal. It's been fun, but I think I've gotta leave now. See ya," he screamed and zipped out of the house. Fugaku's lips curved upwards for an instant as he watched Izuna Uchiha run for his life. Itachi slightly grinned at his father as he took off after his friend. Fugaku shook his head and sighed. He looked up at the setting sun, and prayed that his firstborn would survive the Chunin exams. At the orphanage, Yuto gritted his teeth as a kunai was rammed into his shoulder. He forced himself to calm down. There were kunai protruding from every joint in his body. As soon as Sarutobi had left, Cho had dragged him to the slums. The worst part of Konoha, where all the drunkards, bandits, rouges, and scum of Konoha hung out. They all immediately hung him from boards and began to torture him the worst way imaginable, spilling his blood all over the ground. The leader grinned as some Anbu joined in. "All right, let's show this demon the true meaning of pain," he roared. And, instantly, all the kunai protruding from his body were twisted, shattering his joints. Naruto's azure eyes widened and his mouth gaped as blood ran down the corners of his lips. He squeezed his eyes shut, holding back the tears beginning to form. "I will not cry," he whispered softly. The leader slammed his fist into Naruto's gut with a metal glove, causing Naruto to gasp. "I'm not feeling it," the leader roared. "Show this damn brat some pain." The rest roared in approval as all of them poured onto him at once, like crows to a dead corpse. Naruto sobbed silently as he felt blows as stabs from all over. Then, for the first time in Naruto's 3 years of living, he was angry. Angry that had to pay such a price for a reason he did not know. Angry that he had to live in constant fear, without any means of safety. And, for the first time, Naruto felt weak. "I want to be strong," he whispered, his hair covering his eyes. Someone shattered one of his kneecaps. "If only I was stronger," he whispered. Another kneecap. "If only I had more power." More power. The leader grinned as he felt Naruto beginning to shake. "Yes," he screamed insanely. "Make him bleed. Make him scream. I want to hear him beg for mercy before I finally end his pathetic life." "No," Naruto growled. Black mist oozed out of his body. "You will not touch me." The leader's eyes widened in fear, as Naruto's head jerked up, meeting his eyes. They were completely black, with red swirls. The leader shook as he screamed in horror. Naruto curved his mouth into a snarl. "Run for your lives. The demon spawn is gonna kill us," the man cried as he charged out of the alleyway. Followed by many others, Naruto flexed his arms, snapped the chains that bound him as he landed in a crouch. He watched calmly as he watched them go, black mist coiling and swirling around him. "I will not let you escape," he roared. He raised his hands and pointing them towards the fleeing mob. Black mist gathered in his palm, and shot out in a burst of chakra. The black blast twisted, briefly forming into the head of a dragon, before slamming into the crowd and passed through their bodies like an illusion. Naruto watched as he saw their souls life out of their bodies and fell out into the sky as they all slipped to the floor, stone dead without any life remaining. Naruto's eyes drained of black energy as the black mist began to dissipate. He slipped to his knees at the scene before him, and for the first time in Naruto's life, he began to cry. "Lord Hokage, there's an emergency." And Anbu cried as his body flickered in Hiruzen's office. Hiruzen abruptly stopped glaring at his paperwork. "What is it, Bull?" he replied wearily. "It's Naruto, sir." The Sandame's eyes widened in alarm. "What?" he yelled, leaping from his chair. "What happened?" he growled as his killer intent began to ooze of his body in waves. The entire village shuddered as they felt the Hokage's killer intent wash over the entire village, spreading panic and fear in the corrupt civilian council members. The Anbu shuddered. He was nearly beaten to death, "Lord Hokage," he said, slowly bowing his head. The Hokage glared ferociously at him. "Dog and Swan are on their way to him now." "Lord Hokage, say no more," the Hokage growled. He thundered out of his office and slammed the door, earning a frightened squeak from his assistant. "Wait, Lord Hokage," he cried, bolting after him. But, when he opened the door, the Hokage had disappeared. "Damn," he cursed. He had forgotten to mention what happened to the ones who tried to kill Naruto. After all, he was there, watching the entire event unfold. "I will not let you escape," he roared. He raised his hands and pointing them towards the fleeing mob. Black mist gathered in his palm, and shot out in a burst of chakra. The black blast twisted, briefly forming into the head of a dragon, before slamming into the crowd and passed through their bodies like an illusion. Naruto watched as he saw their souls life out of their bodies and float into the sky as they all slipped to the floor, stone dead without any life remaining. "That brat is dangerous," Bull muttered. How could the Hokage ignore it? No matter how you looked at it. Naruto had the blood of human beings on his hands now. "I must do something about him," Bull muttered. "Before it's too late." At the slum's alleyway, Naruto stared, shocked at the amount of dead bodies that lay before him. As he wiped away the last of his tears. What What have I done? He thought in horror as he stared at his shaking hands. This wasn't supposed to happen, he thought, clutching his face. And ignoring his severe wounds which were already beginning to show signs of healing. He sat there, unable to form words as the sun dipped below the horizon and light became darkness. Hey demon, an insane voice sang. Where are you? I want to kill you, so come out nice and slow, the voice slithered. Naruto gasped and tried to get to his feet, but his body cried out in pain, and he slipped to the ground. His vision white from agony. The only man he failed to kill rounded the alley. It was the leader. His ugly pug-like face leered down at helpless Naruto as Naruto pushed himself backwards with his mangled arms, trying desperately to flee. The leader threw his head back and laughed at Sky. Suddenly, he yanked out a kunai and rammed it into Naruto's hand, pinning it to the ground. Naruto clenched his fist as his vision went white once again. When his vision began to clear, he saw the leader standing over him with a kunai aimed at his heart. After I kill you, I'm going to kill myself. He screamed at Naruto, enjoying the look of fear on his face. I've lost too much because of you. My family, my home, my status. He pressed the kunai against Naruto's throat. All because of you. You know what, brat? I'll tell you a little secret before I plunge my kunai into your throat. Naruto stared up at his groggily as he felt himself losing consciousness. Don't you dare faint, ya damn wimp. He screamed, slapping Naruto in the face. Naruto's yes shot open. Now, as I was saying, I'm going to tell you something that your precious, old man, kept secret from you all your life. He bent close to Naruto's ear and whispered. Naruto Uzumaki, you are the nine-tailed fox. At the Uchiha compound. Itachi, your team is here to see you, Makoto called from the kitchen. Itachi gasped, his mouth in horror. If his father discovered that two Senju were in the Uchiha compound, he'd have a fit of rage. Tell them to wait outside the compound for me, he yelled quickly. He quickly strapped a tanto to his waist, as barged out of the house. He opened the gate and found Mito and Isamu, leaning against the gate, looking a bit miffed about waiting outside. Hey, what's the big idea, Itachi? 14-year-old Isamu called. He had a handsome face, with gray eyes, and long straight black hair that touched his shoulders. He wore a black shirt and pants, with a green jacket that went up to this mid-thigh. His headband was on his forehead and he carried a short wakizashi on his back. His mouth curved into a permanent cheerful smile. Yeah, that was harsh, Isamu's sister, 13-year-old Mito called. She was a little shorter than her brother, with blue eyes, black hair that flowed down her back, with some strands being was dressed in blood-red flexible armor and had a golden clawed gauntlet on one hand. She was clenching her fist, like she was getting ready for a fight. Itachi gave them a nervous chuckle. Sorry about that, you do know how dad is about Senju. Mito rolled her eyes. Since when do we care what he thinks? Itachi glanced behind him quickly, but to his relief, his father was nowhere to be seen at the moment. Where's Sensei? Itachi asked, looking around. Isamu shrugged. I can't believe we have to leave for the Chunin exams at night. I hate the night, Mito whined. Isamu slung his arm around Mito's shoulders and gave her a teasing grin. I'll be sure to take note of that when it's midnight, and you're all alone. He cackled, rubbing his hands together. Mito growled at him and punched him on the shoulder. Itachi smiled at his team. Though they were from rival clans, no one, not even Fugaku, could deny that they were a true force to be reckoned with. Besides, it was a well-known fact that Itachi cared little for petty clan rivalries. Their brother Raiden was the elder twin of Isamu, and he was hailed as a genius. He could have graduated at the same age as Itachi did, but his foster parents decided to hold him back. In fear of the infamous Senju clan dying out, it was also well known that Raiden was the only shinobi to ever have the true wood-release bloodline since Hashirama Senju. Is anyone going to see you off? Itachi asked, puzzled. Usually, they had hordes of fans to see them off from wherever. Isamu shrugged. We ditched him as soon as we left. Itachi looked somewhat amused. How about you? Isn't your family gonna see you off? Mito demanded. I already said my goodbyes when I left the house, but Izuna and Shisui were supposed to meet me here. As if on cue, Itachi heard a voice call, Itachi. Itachi turned around to see Izuna and Shisui running towards him at top speed, alarm clearly showing on their faces. "Hey, what's going on?" Itachi said worriedly. "Follow me." "Come on Itachi." Na yelled and grabbed all three of them and charged in the opposite direction, ignoring their protests. "What is it Izuna?" Itachi yelled. He had never seen his friend so worried before. "Just follow me. There's no time to explain." Izuna yelled back, speeding through the slums. Shisui stayed back at the point where the team was supposed to wait for their sensei. "What's going on Shisui? Where is my team?" a deep voice asked. Shisui turned to the man, relieved. "Ah good, Ichiro-sensei. You're here." Itachi, Mito, and Isamu went that way, he said pointing. Something came up and Izuna was dragging them to the slums. The man frowned. "All right, Shisui. Tell the Hokage I'll be a little late for departure with the other teams. Tell him that I'll catch up, got it?" Shisui nodded, but grinned. "You know sensei, it wouldn't hurt to call him father once in a while." Ichiro Sarutobi, the elder brother of Asuma, and father of Konohamaru chuckled. "Now, where would be the fun in that? At the slums. And now, demon," the leader whispered menacingly. He pushed the kunai deeper into Naruto's neck. "Stop," a voice commanded. The leader froze, but relaxed once he realized it was a child's voice. He grabbed Naruto's neck, keeping the weapon on his throat, and turned around. Itachi, Isamu, and Mito couldn't believe what they were seeing. This man had nearly killed a child. "What do you think you're doing?" Isamu screamed. He had already drawn his short sword. The man chuckled. He then saw the hidden leaf headbands around their foreheads. "They're genin," he realized. He silently cursed as he saw one had red eyes, and two others had the symbol of the Senju clan on their shoulders. He grinned. "Well, it is truly an honor to meet such distinguished individuals such as yourself. Now, move along while I finish off this demon." "All right." Itachi's eyes flared in anger. "How dare you?" he whispered. Suddenly, he noticed a stream of bodies down the alleyway. His eyes widened in shock as his Sharingan picked up no life signs. The leaders followed Itachi's gaze and grinned, knowing exactly what was on Itachi's mind. "Oh, you think I murdered all these people Uchiha? Well you're wrong. Ya know who did. This demon did. This demon brat slaughtered them like dogs." Itachi and the others gasped. Naruto stared at the ground, tears running down his face. He closed his eyes, wishing this nightmare would end. Itachi stared at the Naruto's bloodied face, and realized, to his horror, the man was telling the truth. There was guilt and shame written all over the boy's face. Itachi gripped his kunai. "What should I do?" he wondered, as his knuckles began to bleed. Mito and Izuna froze in their stances, unable to act. Suddenly Itachi saw Isamu move forward. His sword was shaking in hand in fear. No, not in fear. Itachi realized. It was in anger. "Get away from the kid, or I'll kill you," Isamu whispered threateningly. The filthy man's eyes flickered in hate and fear. "What do you think you're doing, you stupid kid? This hell spawn just murdered a bunch of innocent people. Are you just gonna stand by and let that happen? I said, step away from the kid. Now," Isamu yelled. Surprised, the man threw Naruto down, and rushed towards Isamu with a huge knife with intent to kill. The others froze, not knowing what to do, as Isamu dodged one stroke. The man growled and he thrust Ed with the knife again. But Isamu leaned forward and jammed the tip of his sword into the man's stomach. The man gasped, and screamed in pain, as he felt the cold metal slip out his body. He slowly slid to the floor, as Naruto looked on in horror. The expression on the boy's face. It was so calm and emotionless. Naruto backed away slowly as Isamu began to walk towards him. "It's all right," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." Naruto relaxed. "Isamu, watch out," Itachi yelled. "Wah!" Isamu began, then felt metal pierce his shin. He cried out as he saw the man had stabbed him when his back was turned. "Damn you," the man said through bloodied lips. "I'm going to..." Thud. A kunai embedded in his back, and he fell silent. Isamu fell to his knees in pain as Ichiro Sarutobi emerged from the shadows, looking grim. "This isn't good," he thought. Naruto's been beaten, and just watched someone get killed. Plus, that ankle of Isamu's is nothing to laugh at. "Sensei!" he heard Mito yell. He turned to the rest of the shinobi. It's all right, he said reassuringly. I'll get them to the old man right away. He'll want to know what happened. I'm all right, sensei, Isamu said shakily, getting to his feet. He gave an experimental kick. Ichiro frowned. If you say so, but we aren't leaving until we stitch that up and get Naruto to Old Man Hokage. The others nodded hesitantly. Suddenly, Naruto swayed and hit the ground with a thud, unconscious. Ichiro sighed as he picked the boy up and made his way to the Hokage Tower with his students following close behind. They never noticed an NBU in a swan mask following close behind. Darkness. Nothing but darkness engulfed Naruto's vision. He stumbled forward like a blind man, feeling for a wall or a solid structure. He could smell a horrid odor. And he could feel the mucky water beneath his feet. The smell of rotting flesh filled the air around him, and he still couldn't see a single thing. Naruto coughed and gagged as the stench grew stronger. He tripped and finally leaned against a wall. It was damp and fuzzy from moss and fungus. He could smell it. He pushed forward wearily, keeping one hand on the wall as he went. He still had no idea where he was. The last thing he could remember was that man saving him from the leader. He also had no idea why the leader even had the guts to keep beating him like that. He really must have been mad at me, Naruto thought sadly. Suddenly, his eyes widened. He froze and fell to his knees, holding his head. He told me I was the nine-tailed fox, he said in horror. No. No way, Naruto whispered. The old man said that the fourth killed him. I can't be him. But, maybe it's why everyone hates me, he said in realization. Tears leaked out of the corners of his eyes. No. No. Yes. A deep demonic voice filled the place. That stupid filthy human was right. It roared. You are a demon. Naruto froze as he felt something breathing on his neck. He slowly turned around to say, himself in the reflection of two red glowing eyes. With Ichiro Sarutobi. Are you sure you're okay, Isamu? Ichiro asked in a concerned tone. Isamu nodded and grinned, but Ichiro didn't believe him. What was going on there, sensei? Itachi asked. They were walking towards the Hokage Tower to inform the Hokage of the situation. Ichiro sighed and looked at the sky, wondering how to explain it to the boy. Well, he finally said. Let's just say that young Naruto is hated for something he has no control over and leave it at that. The genin glanced at each other questioningly, but didn't pursue the issue. What I want to know is why that man was still beating him up, even after he killed all those people. Wouldn't he be afraid? Mito mused. She shuddered as she remembered the amount of blood on the blonde boy's body. Ichiro smiled grimly. People tend to do stupid things when they lose themselves in their hate, Mito. Though, I don't think the killing of those people was Naruto's fault. Naruto? Itachi questioned. Ichiro nodded. You've heard of him then? All three nodded. Our caretakers told us to stay away from him, Isamu said, rubbing his chin. I asked her why, but she didn't say. Ichiro shook his head. There was no changing these people. Suddenly, they all froze as they felt killer intent blazing from the Hokage Tower. The genin fell to their knees, gasping for breath. As Ichiro's eyes widened as he shuddered. It seemed his father was not in a good mood. Suddenly, there was a swirl of leaves, and Hiruzen appeared in front of Ichiro, eyes blazing with fury. Now calm down, Dad, Ichiro said nervously. Sweat visible on his brow. He was holding up his hands. Let's not do anything hasty. Where is Naruto? Hiruzen growled, his voice low and deep. Ichiro pointed a shaking hand at Naruto's prone body. The killer intent dissipated as Hiruzen stared at Naruto's body sorrowfully. I failed him, he said simply. Without another word, he picked up Naruto and headed towards the hospital. They all watched him go. Ichiro wore an expression of sadness on his face, while the children eyed him curiously. Why was the Hokage himself responsible? In the shadows, all the while, in their haste and worry, none had noticed that another was watching the events that transpired. A certain Anbu in a swan mask growled as she felt an opportunity slip through her fingers. Was no way she could get to the boy without the Hokage knowing about it now. She slipped her kunai back into her sleeve. She would wait until the right opportunity presented itself, whether Kakashi approved or not. At the Hokage Tower. Hiruzen sighed as he placed his head in his hands. He had failed yet again. He had failed to save Minato, and he had failed to save Naruto. He lifted his head up as he stared out the window at dark sky, wondering exactly where he had gone wrong. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Lord Hokage, the orphanage mistress Cho is here to see you," his assistant said. "Send her in," he said firmly, a stern expression on his face. He had to know exactly how this event had transpired, and the first step was to question Cho. He had no doubt that Cho had no hand in the incident. But he knew he had to know how this had happened, even under the watch of his Anbu. Cho simpered as she opened the door as gently as possible and peeked in innocently at the Hoka. Ji-Hu couldn't help but give an unnoticeable grin. Her antics always amused him ever since they were academy students. "You may come in, Cho," she said firmly. She lightly closed the door and delicately sat in her chair across from his desk. He leaned forward on his chair and narrowed his eyes at her, making her squirm uncomfortably under his piercing gaze. "I'll get right to point, Cho," he said simply. "I'm sure you are aware that Naruto was attacked last night." Cho leapt to her feet, her face white with shock. "What?" she demanded, nearly screaming. "When did this happen?" Hiruzen sighed heavily as he closed his eyes, remembering the boy's mangled body. His eyes snapped, his eyes open. "Just after sunset, right after you took him back inside. I want to know exactly what's going on, my friend. How is it possible that Naruto was smuggled out to the slums while my Anbu claim he was at your orphanage the entire time?" Cho sat down heavily, still unable to speak. I was sure he was right in his bed after you dropped him off. How could I have missed it?" Suddenly his face snapped up. "Of course, it was a powerful genjutsu." Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at her suspiciously. Her face was sincere, but something wasn't right. "Lord Hokage," she said, raising a meaty hand. "I remember something. The worker that I had escort Naruto to bed. His last name was Kurama." Hiruzen's eyebrows lifted in interest. "Are you certain?" he inquired. She nodded vigorously. "It's a theory, but it's well known that Kurama clansmen are capable of performing S-rank genjutsu." Hiruzen rubbed his forehead as he stared at the ceiling. The situation had gotten much more complicated. With the Kurama clan against Naruto, there were few who could deal with them. Even Jiraiya would have some trouble. After all, genjutsu was his weak point. The amount of people who could deal with the clan could only be counted on one hand. Still, he was relieved that Cho had nothing to do with Naruto's pain. He was right to trust her. "Very well, Cho," she said, smiling at her. "Please take care of him." She nodded enthusiastically, though she looked disappointed in herself. Hiruzen sympathized with her. Shish. He had lost a loved one in the Kyuubi attack, yet still she cared for Naruto more than anyone else. "Lord Hokage," she said, "will you please sign this? I need more genjutsu-oriented shinobi in order to protect Naruto." "Very well," he replied easily and signed the sheet on paper in the Hokage official seal without reading a single word. Cho inwardly grinned triumphantly as she struggled not to laugh loud at the foolishness of her so-called Hokage. Sarutobi has become such a fool, Cho thought as she gently took the piece of paper back from his grasp and delicately placed it back in her lump purse. She bowed low toward Hiruzen. "Thank you for forgiving me, Lord Hokage. I promise." Her hands curled into fists. "I will not fail you again." Hiruzen smiled grimly. She nodded at him, and turned to leave. A wide grin was present on her face now as she hastily made her way back to the orphanage to fulfill the Hokage's will. 3 months later, Naruto coughed raggedly as he struggled to rise from the dirt. Massive wounds adorned his small body, and he was smeared with dirt and grime. His listless eyes drooped as he wearily stumbled down an alleyway, trying to run away as far as possible. Numerous cries for his death echoed across the slums. Naruto leapt down a manhole into the sewers, whimpering slightly as he heard the pounding of feet overhead. He hadn't eaten anything in nearly a week, and it was starting to take a toll on his body. He was no longer as quick as he was when Cho trapped him here. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. Much had occurred in the time since his birthday, and none of it was pleasant. The lack of food wasn't just affecting his physical performance in this little survival plane. He felt as if he couldn't think straight. Like as though oots were being squeezed through an ink bottle. His eyes snapped open as he heard an echo of breathing. He jumped to his feet and prepared to flee. Suddenly, he heard laughter. Mocking laughter filled his eyes as he searched desperately for the source. His eyes widened when he felt a familiar chill settle over him, and a bloodthirsty aura. He growled in anger as he charged forward, twisting through alleyways of the sewer. He knew exactly where to go. Soon, he slid to a stop before a giant cage. He glared fiercely at it as two enormous eyes slid open and glared at him balefully. So, the insect dares before the god. At the gates of Konoha. At the gates of Konoha, two familiar Chunin stood at guard, both as bored as hell as they stared off into the sky dreaming of when they would finally become Jonin and quit their stupid job. When is something going to happen around here? Kotetsu said, jamming his finger into his nose. Azumo glanced at his lazily. You better hope something interesting will happen. Watch. Next thing you know, enemy ninja will charge for the village. Don't jinx it, buddy, Kotetsu retorted sarcastically. Then, he sighed as he stared at the sky again. I won. What's taking our trainees so long to return from the Chunin exams? They should have been back nearly a week ago. Wonder what's keeping them, he mused. Azumo shrugged, not knowing what to say. It was an uncomfortable subject. The Chunin exams in the Bloody Mist were not usually civilized. You don't think? Kotetsu began. Azumo glared at him angrily. Don't talk like that, Kotetsu. You do know that the Hokage's son's team is out there as well. I hear that they have the heir to the Uchiha clan as well as two survivors of the Senju. I'm certain we won't fail. You're probably right, Kotetsu agreed reluctantly. They both absent-mindedly stared at the sky again and sighed. Suddenly, Azumo spotted a flicker of movement and zeroed in on two short figures in the distance. Hey Kotetsu, Azumo said, pointing. Kotetsu cracked open one eye lazily as he eyed the figures suspiciously. Hey you, he shouted. Who goes there? Azumo smacked his head in exasperation. His friend never did learn Hat Konoha was supposed to be a friendly place, not some fortress. But, Kotetsu never seemed to listen. Who goes there? State your names, Kotetsu demanded again. The two figures came into view, and both the Chunin gasped. It's you, Itachi Uchiha and Mito Senju. Returning from Kiri Chunin exams, came a sharp monotone reply. Azumo and Kotetsu looked at each other. If these two were by themselves in their state, that meant only one thing. For some reason, Ichiro Sarutobi and Isamu Senju were no longer among the living. And that's what's going down, folks. Okay, as you can see, Naruto is trapped in the slums with no way to escape, and the Kyuubi is being as helpful as ever. Sarcasm. What will become of Naruto? What happened to Ichiro and Isamu? What exactly was on that document that Hiruzen signed? Find out. Next time. Next up. Naruto trains himself to survive in the slums as the Keduin clan and Kurama clan plot their revenge. And his training to survive in this harsh world finally begins. P.S. Please review. Keep an eye out for upcoming stories, and feel free to check out my other stories. And, here's the short preview for my Naruto fairy tale crossover. Erza, don't do it. Natsu screamed as he tried to launch himself at her. Gray held the Pinket's back as Erza's body began to glow. No, Natsu, Gray yelled, clutching Natsu's arms tighter. The only thing we can do now is trust in her power. The glow died down and revealed Erza in silver armor with a horned helmet, and two shields on her arms. The adamantine armor, Happy gasped. Die fairies, Jose screamed hysterically from his guild. Erza slammed the two shield together, and a massive light blue magic seal blazed in front of her. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed, 17-year-old boy shouted at her to stop, but she ignored him. I have to do this. Lucy, Natsu, Raiden, everyone, show them the power of fairy tale. The purple energy ball amassed and fired a concentrated blast of energy, shimmered with power as it tore towards Erza's form. Erza squeezed her eyes shut and dug her boots farther into the ground, preparing for impact, but it never came. There was stillness as the whole guild went silent. Erza cracked open a single eye, only to see sand. She gasped as she realized he was standing in front of her. She could only see his back and red hair that touched his neck. Sand flowed from the gourd on his back, and formed a protective barrier around them. He turned around slowly. Her eyes widened, as did the other guild members. They realized exactly who had saved them. Green emotionless eyes stared back at Erza. A red tattoo with kanji for love was on his forehead, and there were black lines around his eyes from lack of sleep. I can't believe it, Miragen stuttered. It's you, Gaara. You and Naruto have returned. Quote. Gaara gave a simple nod in acknowledgement. All the guild members gasped in surprise. Lucy stared at them, confused. Who would make them act like this? Who was Gaara, and this? Naruto. I'm confused. What's going on, Natsu? She said, turning to her Dragon Slayer friend, only to see his face was frozen with shock. He's really back then, Natsu said slowly, beginning to grin. Gaara nodded, his face not betraying any emotions. Suddenly, a murderous black aura pressed down on them. Everyone struggled to breathe as the stench of death overwhelmed their senses. Despite the fear coursing through the guild's bodies, each grinned with happiness. Particularly, a blonde-haired boy, Raiden. Leave this one to me, a masculine powerful voice said. Everyone looked up in shock. Standing before them was a man with long black hair, and auburn red eyes, with black bandages wrapping around his body, and a long black ragged cloak draped over his shoulders similar to my avatar. Or Ichigo's Mugetsu, and in his hand was that black war fan of Madara Uchiha. Naruto Namikaze had returned to Fairy Tail. Gaara grinned despite himself. Finally, the greatest team of the magical world will reunite again. Naruto stared determinedly at the great demon cage before him. The Kyuubi's red eyes seemed to gleam with rage and greed as it stared at the unflinching Naruto. Both glowered at each other, not wanting to back down. Finally, Naruto broke the tense silence. What is it you want, Fox? He said coldly. The Kyuubi grinned. He was happy with the way things were going. The boy had definitely buried himself in his hate as the months went by. At this rate, he had even more confidence that the boy's growing rage would lead to his downfall. All it took was a single push. A single misstep on the naive boy's part for him to escape his infernal prison that the damned Hokage had confined him to. And, once he was free, he would kill the boy as a reminder to the world that he would not be sealed again. What I want, is for you to get stronger, the Kyuubi growled, a sly grin etched on his face, red eyes dancing with malevolence and madness. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the Kyuubi. Why would you want to help me? He retorted. The Kyuubi grinned wider. He kept forgetting that the boy before him was no ordinary 3-year-old. After all, Kyuubi knew that unlike most children, Naruto was special. Naruto remembered every single moment of his life, since that day he was born. Of course, Kyuubi didn't tell him that the boy held none of his memories as of yet, just experience. I want to help you, because, as you have noticed, we're in a death trap, the Kyuubi remarked sarcastically. I just to know that you will survive, so I don't have to die alongside you. There's no way I would want to die in such a pathetic manner. Naruto glared at the Kyuubi. He had long discovered that the Kyuubi didn't have any real power unless he gave into his darkest emotions. He knew that the Kyuubi's interests were his own, nothing more. If he was offering to help Naruto get stronger, there was a catch. What is it you want from me, Kyuubi? Naruto repeated, not taking his gaze off the demon. Kyuubi didn't reply. Naruto turned to go. Forget it, he snarled. If you won't help me, then being here is just a waste of time. He began to walk away. Stop, the Kyuubi ordered. Naruto stopped at the archway. Look, worm, I'm not on your side in this matter. If fact, you can go cry yourself to death or die in a damn gutter for all I care. I'm here 'cause I got to stick around in this pathetic meatbag you call a body until I can get free, or you die, taking you with me. I'm just a spectator. You know this already. I told you when we first met. Yeah, what's your point? Naruto replied quietly, looking over his shoulder. The Kyuubi grinned even wider, as saliva dripped down his mouth. Show some respect, insect. I'm offering you a chance to save both our lives here. Through I doubt you could harness my majestic gift any better than a donkey. Get to the point already, Naruto shot back. In case you haven't noticed, every moment I'm standing around wasting time is more time for them to catch up to me. Fine, the Kyuubi relied, still grinning. I'll teach you a new trick that will rid you of those worms following you. And, just so you know, insect, time slows down when you're in my domain. So, we can waste all the time we want. Of course, that also means, if you're in here too long, your lifespan will decrease. The only way to get around T-hat problem is to directly communicate outside the seal, but we both know that it would be impossible with other worms out there to distract us. You're being unusually chatty today, Kyuubi, Naruto remarked dryly. Don't get used to, the nine-tailed fox replied. There's only one reason I'm helping you, and that's to survive. Otherwise, I couldn't care less. Naruto faced the Kyuubi, his face betraying no emotion. Okay, how are you going to help me? The Kyuubi's crimson eyes slitted in greed. He pointed a single claw at Naruto and motioned for him to step inside. Naruto took a deep breath, and hesitantly took a single step in Kyuubi's cage. The stench of death overwhelmed his senses. He crinkled his nose in disgust. The Kyuubi grinned, exposing all his stained teeth as if he could tell what Naruto was thinking. Come, stand in front of me, insect. I know it is a great honor, but you need not fear me. I'm not afraid of you, Naruto growled, and stood in front of the demon, eyeing him distrustfully. What's the deal? Why is he helping me all of a sudden? I remember when we first met face to face. It was right after I killed all those people in the slums. That was right before Cho trapped me here in the slums, with ninja positioned everywhere to make sure I can't leave. Back then, he spat in my face when I asked him for help, and now, all of a sudden, he's helping me. What's he planning? The Kyuubi was delightful. The boy was suspicions, and he had a right to be. After all, helping the boy was the exact opposite of his intentions most of the time. But this time, he knew he had to help the boy. The times they had been close to death was almost uncountable. He could still remember the time when the boy had so close to death from numerous beatings and lack of sustenance, that it took him nearly all of his power to keep the boy alive. He had pondered on giving the boy this gift for a long time. He knew that only the blood of an Uzumaki could handle the strain. But the chances of them surviving the process were still only 5%. If this Kekkei Genkai manifested in a human, he suspected they had to carry the most potent demonic chakra sealed within their bodies. And, since the boy had him, the most powerful of the tailed beasts sealed in his body, he could give him this Kekkei Genkai. Alright, listen closely. There's nothing I hate more than idiotic knuckleheads. And having to repeat myself to them. Listening. Good. The first thing you have to do is, the Kyuubi grinned maliciously. He always loved this part. The part where his young container had no idea what his plan was. Die. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as Kyuubi thrust his claw into Naruto's chest, watching gleefully as anger and betrayal flashed across his face. Naruto wa tched as the Kyuubi's claw stabbed him through the chest. Blood ran down the corners of his mouth, as he slowly fell to his knees. Kyuubi's eyes flashed cruelly in sick delight as he yanked the claw harshly from Naruto's chest. Watching as blood splattered the ground of his cage, a blank was on Naruto's face as his lifeless body slipped face first on the filthy cage ground, in a pool of his own blood. The grinning nine-tailed fox towered over Naruto's body, a malicious feral grin on his face, and his eyes completely glowing red. This had to happen, stupid boy, Kyuubi growled triumphantly. He only for you receive this Kekkei Genkai is for you to experience the darkest of emotions and be dark of heart. With you, who only had me to count on. Only me that you could understand, to be betrayed by me. You have felt and experienced the one emotion that you need. This bloodline also requires something I never revealed to you. It requires one to have an overwhelming desire of murder. The stronger the hate, the more likely you will survive. In other words, in order to be assured of your survival, I knew I had to do something drastic. You see, boy, one cannot be killed within their own mindscape. There is only one way for death to be accomplished without the use of revival, and that is to have a demon sealed within the user's body. Suddenly, Naruto's body began to emit pitch-black smoke that coiled and spread out around him. The black smoke rose in the air above Naruto's death wound, forming a perfect sphere. The sphere paused in midair, then suddenly dropped on Naruto's wound, filling it up, and suddenly, it was gone. Naruto coughed as his eyes blinked open drowsily. Kyuubi was grinning madly, but suddenly, he froze in shock and fear. Naruto's eyes. It was the same demonic eyes as before. Pure black, with spiraling crimson rings. It blazed for a moment on his eyes, then died down, and disappeared. The Kyuubi watched in slight awe as smoke drifted from his eyes into the air. He has the same eyes as Father, Kyuubi thought. No, something wasn't right. Those weren't the eyes of the Rinnegan. There was something different. I wonder, what are you, my jailer? I saw them before, but I couldn't believe it until I saw it. Naruto gasped as he pushed up from his hands. His lungs felt like jelly, and his body felt like it would crumble. He had never felt so weak in his life. He struggled to roll over on his back, panting heavily. Sweat covered his entire body, and a shocked expression was on his face as he slowly put a hand to his chest where his wound used to be. What happened? He murmured. Didn't I? Yes, you did, Kyuubi growled. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he leapt to his feet, ignoring the immeasurable pain all over his weak body. The Kyuubi raised an eyebrow, amused. Relax, insect, the Kyuubi rumbled through grinning teeth. Naruto stared at him distrustfully, his normally bright eyes seemingly full of darkness and rage. Kyuubi grinned. 2 birds, 1 stone. In helping Naruto, he had also increased his capacity for madness. It was a double-edged sword. He was quite satisfied with what had occurred. Insect, it's time to hu something that will begin your revenge. Prepare yourself. At the Hokage Tower, the Sandaime stared out the window sorrowfully as 2 genin stood before him. There was no need for words to be spoken. Both had experienced heavy losses. Itachi felt as if he was in a trance. Like a part of his heart had been torn out his chest. He still couldn't get around it. Isamu Senju, his teammate, was dead, impaled by a massive shuriken as his wounded ankle bumped into a tree root. This was the same wound he had received when he had rescued that boy, Naruto. Mito's fists were clenched as she barely suppressed her emotions. They still had no idea how their sensei's death had occurred, but they knew that it was no accident. It was murder. There was no way to avoid that fact. Ichiro Sarutobi was an A-rank ninja, and had a considerable amount of bounties on his head. When they had found their sensei's body, they realized his head was missing. She choked back a sob. It had seemed like just yesterday that they had all laughed together before the Chunin exams, ready for the grand future that lay ahead. Now, her brother, and her sensei, would never experience that future with them. The Sandaime sighed, unable to speak. He knew that there was absolutely nothing he could do in this case for compensation for his genin in one of his son's deaths. The genin, though a senju, was participating in the Chunin exams. Meaning Kiri couldn't be held responsible for his death. After all, many young shinobi died in the Chunin exams every year, and that's the way it was. However, his son was a different matter. Itachi and Mito had already told him that they were on their way back from the Mist Village when their sensei was killer. They still had no idea how it happened. They said that they remembered coming across a group of bandits, and he stayed behind to fight them. He knew that ninjas sometimes made mistakes like everyone else, and Isamu's death could have clouded his judgment, but he knew his son better than anyone. Ichiro Sarutobi was never angry. He never showed it, or let himself feel any emotion until he was alone or with his family. Then, he would let his emotions out, at full blast. Not wanting to burden everyone else around him. His son wasn't killed by bandits. But, among those bandits, was a powerful bounty hunter, capable of taking his son on, and defeating him. Hiruzen interlaced his fingers as he pondered on what to do in this whole situation. He knew he certainly couldn't blame the mist for losing one of his jonin when they were so far away from the village. Itachi, Mito, he said addressing them. They looked suddenly at him, as if shaken out of a trance. Go home, mourn, and take all the time you need. Losing a teammate is never easy, and losing one's sensei is worse, he said sadly. Remembering how his sensei, Tobirama, had passed away. If you wish to retire, tell me. I will understand. Remember, Isamu and Ichiro wouldn't have wanted you to spend the rest of your life in sorrow. Let me give you some advice. I have always found that one should mourn for 3 days. Then, remember the person always, but do not stop living because of it. Itachi and Mito nodded lifelessly. Too miserable to reply, Hiruzen closed his eyes sorrowfully as he gave them permission to leave. He leaned back on his chair. He wondered how Naruto was doing. It was good of Cho to ask for protection for the boy. I think he's going to be fine. He's in good hands. Maybe I'll pay him a surprise visit. I'll have to tell him sooner or later of their deaths. Might as well be now. After all, he did like them for the short amount of time they were here. He stood up and disappeared in a whirl of leaves. At the slums, Naruto struggled to his feet as he gasped for breath. His entire body was shaking like a storm. He hesitantly stared at his trembling palm. Embedded on them were two overlapping diamonds. The Kyuubi had given him a bloodline, and he knew which one it was. He clenched his fist as his eyes burned with determination, eyeing the shadows that seemed to come to life at every movement from the hostiles. There, I see him, an ugly choppy voice called out excitedly. Naruto glared, his eyes dancing with rage. He knew that this would be a cakewalk. After all, though the roughest neighborhood, in Konoha, these people weren't ninja. He turned his heel and dashed the opposite was. Turning down an alley. Most of the people from the slums were ones that had lost their homes or wealth in the Kyuubi attack. Basically, it was reduced to once greedy merchants, now tough bums. Naruto whipped right down another alley as he heard the pounding of footsteps behind him getting louder. Naruto grinned as he slowly performed the required hand seals, then stopped, and slowly turned around. Prepared to meet his pursuers. His eyes danced with mirth as he prepared to meet his attackers. For this fist time, he could fight back. For the first time in a long time, he was smiling. He heard the pounding of feet grow closer as the grin on his face grew wider, and wider, until it was on the verge of splitting. It was a smile of madness, of delirium. The pounding stopped. There, before him, were 15 angry men, all with pitchforks and clubs in their hands as they stared disdainfully like a piece of trash that wasn't even fit to be in a garbage can. We finally caught up to you, monster. One slurred breathlessly as he held his club over his shoulders, trying to look intimidating. It didn't work. Naruto stared at him until he began to feel uncomfortable, fidgeting as he fingered his club. Get him, another called excitedly. There were cheers of joy and delight as they rained on Naruto like annoying flies, charging all at once. Naruto smirked, as his dirty blonde bangs covered his dark eyes, not literally. Just a little closer. Now, he raised his head, exposing his eyes, and lifted a single hand towards the oncoming men. He whispered, dark style. Black mist gathered at the base of his palm, as he readied his attack. The men froze in fear as they realized what was coming. He's using a jutsu. Run. They all whipped around and fled, trying to escape. But Naruto wasn't to let that happen. Chains of darkness. The mist coiled into his palm and fired outwards in a series of long, pitch-black chains, that quickly stabbed into them or ensnared their ankles and bodies. All 15 were trapped by the jutsu, fearing for their lives, as his chains began to boil with black mist. Suddenly, all of them began to scream as their chakra and energy was drained from their bodies in black waves, and was drawn into Naruto's. He grinned as some of his energy returned. He cancelled his technique, making many prone bodies slip uselessly to the ground. And without looking to see if any were dead, walked away so he could rest, and figure out a plan to escape. After all this time living in fear, he finally could strike back and fight. In the Kurama compound, how the hell is this going to work? An unnamed member of the Kurama clan yelled as he slammed his fist down on the table. We can't keep doing this. The Hokage already suspects us. And we can't keep hiding this forever. Ah, but you forget, Tenzen, another, older voice said. We have the advantage. With the demon child trapped in the slums by our clansmen, we can mask the true circumstances of his death. Isn't that why we trapped him there in the first place? To make sure he dies in a place where there can be no fingers pointing towards us. The Cho woman has been useful. She managed to get the Hokage himself to sign a document that allowed the demon to be transported to the slums. Everything is in place. All that's left is how to kill him. Tenzen nodded as he listened intently. This was the Kurama clan's chance. They had a chance to save Konoha. After the death of Haru, his elder brother, he and his clan had taken extreme measures to make the boy for insect. You were enough to avoid seeking the Hokage's help. And they managed to fool the Anbu into thinking that Naruto's life was full of happiness. When the time came, their mole, Cho allowed them to take the demon away, into the slums. Any attempt he made to get out was instantly nullified with the use of genjutsu. He was the leader of his clan now. I believe we can assist you, a curt voice came from the shadows. Tenzen's eyes widened as he leapt from his chair, seeking the intruder's chakra. Who are you? Why are you intruding on this private meeting? He demanded, his thin mustache trembling slightly. They managed to bypass the genjutsu masters on the gates and the guards. Only one clan has the capability to achieve this. And what business would the Keduan clan have here? As I have said, we can assist you in your goal, said one, stepping out of the shadows. He had a bald head with a small goatee and a wiry muscular build with a Konoha headband on his waist. I am Kenpachi Keduan, son of Agari Keduan, heir to the clan. And Jonin of Konoha. Tenzen Kurama's eyes widened slightly as he heard that. The son of Agari Keduan. That meant that he had indeed perfected the Keduan ability to shape-shift. Does your father know you're here? Kenpachi shook his head. I'm here to rid Konoha of evil on my own. My father doesn't share my ideals. These two beside me share my ideals as well. We would like to assist you in saving Konoha. We can infiltrate anywhere, and we can cause the boy true pain before he dies. Tenzen smiled as he considered the possibilities. Very well, he said after a while. Tomorrow, at sunrise, we execute the demon, once and for all. Naruto closed his eyes gently as he gazed up at the sky, or at least, as much of it as he could through the tall building. That crowded around him like prison bars. Today was finally the day. After an agonizing 3 months of being trapped in this hellhole, he was finally going to escape. Today was the day, when he would be free. His eyes opened as he looked at his hands. He clenched his fist determinedly as he thought back to all that had transpired here. All the pain and suffering he had endured. The near death, starvation and the cold aches and sores every night. The pelting of stones whenever they caught sight of him. The torture he had to endure when he was caught by them. The endless hours of sleepless nights and days as he fought to keep himself alive. Finally, that was all going to end. He would escape this place, or die trying. Most people in the slums were there for only one reason. Because the Kyuubi had destroyed their lives. Whether it be their families, wealth, or homes. They all had lost something that horrifying day, but Naruto Uzumaki had lost something more that day. He had lost his innocence. He had lost his childhood. He had lost his freedom. From this day forth, Naruto vowed that was going to change. When I leave this place, I will tell the old man everything. And that, I truly swear. Naruto thought as he crossed his fingers into a familiar seal. With these jutsu, he would escape. He grinned as he felt his raw chakra enter his creations as he whispered out the name. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of doppelgangers emerged in a puff of smoke completely covering the alley ground in shadows. Naruto smirked at all the clones, then faced forward and dashed forward. The clones dispersed in opposite directions, spreading out over the entirety of the slums, completely covering it. A few dispelled from stones or various other means of slum weaklings, but all reached their objective. Naruto grinned as he made his way through hand seals. It was time to cause some chaos. Great clone explosion, he roared triumphantly. Instantly, all the clones in the surrounding areas began to glow, and suddenly, there was a simultaneous boom. A great explosion blasted outwards from every clone, tearing open the ground and intensifying the winds around. The entire slums felt ground tremble and shift beneath their feet from the vibrations and power, and dozens of explosions surfaced to the air, alerting everyone in Konoha that something was going down in the slums, and it wasn't pretty. Don't let the demon escape. A Kurama member roared as he formed a hand seal, trying to strengthen the genjutsu barrier. Remember, we are going to save Konoha on this day. A clan leader roared as they made way to the slums. His army, and the Keduan clan, would not fail. The demon would die today. Naruto grinned as he ran into a group of thugs. They brandished their weapons threateningly at him. But he merely smirked at their pathetic attempts. All of them sneered distastefully at him, like he was a rabid dog. That stare, Naruto hated it more than anything. He would show them what they had created. They all roared as they dashed towards him. He closed his eyes and summoned forth his chakra, channeling it into his palm. He whispered under his breath. Dark style. Inhaling Ma. His eyes snapped open as he blurred out of sight and reappeared behind them. He thrust his palm into one's back. The overlapping diamonds on his palm glowed eerily as the man's eyes widened. And his body rotted right before their eyes. Chakra drained from his body rapidly as his skin began to wrinkle and darken. Naruto wrenched his hand from the man's back as the man's lifeless body slipped to the floor. The rest of the thugs looked on in horror as Naruto turned his piercing gaze towards them, his eyes glinting with darkness. I'll show you all. I'll show you all what you have created in your rage and anger. I have decided a long time ago. I will change Konoha, and you, scum, will not stand in my way. Without a second thought, he lifted the same open palm in their direction. Many cried in terror as he roared. Dark style. Judgment. Blue chakra flickered on his palm like neon flames. He whipped his hand in their direction. Many scrambled away as blue flames blasted outwards in a straight line, reducing all surroundings to rubble. Dust billowed up as the attack carved its way straight through the thugs and down the line of the slums, causing even more pandemonium. Naruto stood impassively as the wind whipped his wild hair about. I will not stand by this time, Naruto whispered as he turned to leave. If you try to stop me from leaving this place, then make no mistake, I will kill you. He blurred out of sight, making way towards the borders of the slums, where he would finally leave, and truly begin his training. At the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen smiled at the ORP Hanage from his window as he signed the last of paperwork for the day. It was a good day. The threats on Naruto's life were decreasing with each passing day. For once in a long time, things were looking up. Hiruzen stretched, his old bones creaking as he put on his cage garb. He had decided that morning that he would visit Naruto. He knew that he hadn't gotten around to doing that lately, but he figured that he was in good hands. After all, Cho seemed to be doing such an admirable job so far. However, his curiosity for Naruto was endless. There was more to Naruto than what the boys showed. He seemed wise, and especially intelligent for his age. Hiruzen hummed happily as he headed out the door. It had been a while since he visited the boy. 3 months was pretty long. At any rate, he couldn't wait to spend some time with the boy. Being in Naruto's presence actually helped him relax. He walked down the main road of Konoha acknowledging the bows he received with a slight nod of the head. He walked past the gates of the orphanage and raised a hand to knock the door, when suddenly, there an Anbu blurred into existence. Lord Hokage, the council is requesting your presence, he said, his head bowed low. And just when I could finally relax. Hiruzen sighed in wearily as he rubbed his temples. Very well, he said reluctantly. Inform them that I will be arriving shortly. He watched as the Anbu vanished once more. What could they want now? He wondered as he made his way to the council chambers. In the slums, Naruto formed another hand seal, as he spawned another swarm of clones, and dispersed them around himself and the slum's borders. Great clone explosion. Explosions blasted away the surrounding buildings as Naruto grew closer and closer to his goal. He walked slowly forward, oblivious to the lives he was ending, impassive to the destruction and terror he was causing as he made his escape. A group of thugs intercepted his path, but he blasted them all away with blue flames, not sparing their prone bodies a second glance. He was done being beaten. He was done being humiliated. Now, it's my turn to settle the score. I will get out of the slums, and none will stand in my way. Naruto knew exactly where an exit was, but the problem was that every time he even got near it, he became completely lost in endless mazes and corridors. He knew now what was preventing his escape. Genjutsu. His eyes narrowed with concealed madness as he neared the outskirts of the slums. Suddenly he froze as his eyes grew wide with shock. What is this feeling? He thought. His neck tingled as the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. 4 different corridors stretched out before him, each as eerie and dark as midnight. Shadows danced around him as he felt something. A feeling of foreboding settled over him. What's going on? This feeling. I'm not alone. Someone else is here, and they're much stronger than me. Naruto, my boy, is that you? An elderly voice called. Naruto's head snapped up to see the old wizened figure of the third Hokage, staring at him worriedly. At Training Ground 3, Itachi flew through hand signs at a rapid pace, his cheeks puffing out slightly. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. A stream of flames shot out his mouth and incinerated a row of dummies, lighting it on fire, and partially destroying the trunk. He instantly whipped around and cried, "Fire style! Phoenix flower jutsu!" Multiple small fireballs rocketed forth, while the hidden shuriken within them skewered the training dummies. Itachi wiped his face with his hand as he looked up at the setting sun. This was the time when he felt at peace. When he trained under the brightness of the moon. It almost made him forget. "I can't believe this is happening," he thought as he clutched his head in his hands. He slipped to his knees in despair as tears brimmed, but did not fall. Shinobi never cried. Itachi had told himself this time and time again. The day he had become a genin, he had resolved to serve the Leaf Village with all his power. And that meant, he would sacrifice his life and soul for it. It was his duty. "You always were hard on yourself," a voice said. Itachi's head whipped around to see Mito staring at him with sorrowful expression. "It's all right to cry, you know," she said dryly. "You can't face it by avoiding it, Itachi." "Shinobi, don't cry," Itachi whispered. However, his voice spoke for itself. Mito could tell that he was barely holding together. His voice cracked with emotion. Mito slowly stood next to him and lied down on the charred grass. She sighed in defeat as she hugged her legs, and surveyed the damage caused by Itachi. "You really don't like to deal with these kinds of things head-on, do you?" she whispered to him sympathetically. The Itachi she knew always locked his emotions away in a permanent cage. She slowly looked up to the setting sun and thought about those they had lost. She clenched her fists as her anger began to rise. Her brother, the reason for his death. The cause of the death of Isamu Senju, was a wounded ankle. The same ankle wound that had manifested when Isamu had tried to rescue Naruto Uzumaki from a mob. At the slums, Naruto's eyes were wide with innocence and hope. "Old man, is that really you?" Hiruzen gave Naruto a grandfatherly smile, his face crinkling kindly as he held his arms behind his back. "Naruto, my boy," he began. "I've come to take you away from this place. Come, I think you've suffered enough, don't you agree? The council tried to keep me from discovering your whereabouts. But I will always keep you safe. I did make a promise after all." And, after such a long time, Naruto truly smiled. His face had changed. He never expected this, not in his wildest dreams. As the last of sunlight began to vanish behind the Cage Mountain, it illuminated the Koja's shadow, as the Sandame stretched out a hand. "Let's go, Naruto." Naruto nodded as he smiled, his face shining in relief. He slowly reached up, and took the old man's gentle wrinkly hand. The Sandame smiled as Naruto came up alongside him. The Sandame's aura darkened as he gave a malicious seer. There was only a gush of blood. Naruto felt a knife stabbed into his back, as blood stained crimson, forming small puddles. Naruto's vision went white with pain as he gasped, trying desperately to stay conscious. He tantalizingly shifted his neck and turned his horror-struck gaze at the Sandame's bloody face, who wore a dark grin. Naruto didn't cry. He wouldn't cry. Ever since the day he was born, 3 years ago. Not once had he cried, and he wasn't going to start now. What are you doing?" Naruto screamed, as Hiruzen pushed the kunai in deeper, ignoring Naruto's cry of pain. Blood spurted from his mouth as he leaned forward, trying to escape the pain of the kunai lodged in his back. Blood ran down his back, and ripped on the floor. Naruto clenched his teeth as Hiruzen held both Naruto's hands behind his back, and slammed him onto the stone ground. Naruto bit his lip to keep from crying out as he placed a foot on Naruto's back. I thought I could trust you," Naruto snarled. His grimy hair shadowed over his eyes. "Out of all the people here, out of every person, you were the person I thought I could feel safe. Why are you doing this? Tell me, why won't you all just leave me alone?" Hiruzen smirked sinisterly as his pupils contracted from insanity. "You dare ask such a meaningless question? You, the demon who destroyed our village, our fourth Hokage, and created the slums itself. You." Hiruzen's eyes darkened. "You were the cause of so much death and pain. You killed us that day, demon. You extinguished our will. You put out our will of fire that day. And we will never forgive you. You seek to escape the slums, but why do you escape your home? The slums were created when you began your rampage, and destroyed this place, tainting it with your foul chakra. and setting us apart from the rest of the village. Naruto's eyes widened as he witnessed the pure hatred in Hiruzen's face. You have no idea what you're up against, Jinchuriki. Even if you escape this place, where can you go? The leaf will never accept a demon like you, and if you try to leave, you'll be destroyed on the spot. There is no escaping your destiny. The 4th of May have not been able to end your life. But he sacrificed his own life to leave the rest to us, his village. Naruto's gaped in horror as Hiruzen applied more pressure on his back, giving it another kick. You will die here, before the union of Konoha clans. We are not alone. There are many other who beg for your death every day, demon, and they will be here to witness it firsthand. And now, here, Uzen raised the kunai high above his head, while keeping Naruto restrained to keep him from making any hand seals. Now, monster, I will pass judgment upon you, and make you answer for your crimes. Prepare yourself. Your life is about to finally come to an end. He grinned as he wiped Naruto's blood off his face, and brought it down. Naruto waited for the strike to fall, as he closed his eyes, accepting his death. He had nothing to live for anymore. If he couldn't escape the slums, then he would rather leave this world in peace. He was done running. Boom. Naruto's eyes snapped open. He felt an enormous amount of killer intent level the entire street. He felt the foot leave his back as something wet dripped on his face. Naruto wiped it off to see only crimson. It was blood. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked up. You touch him again, and I'll rip out your spine. Naruto tried to get to his feet, but collapsed halfway. Old man, he groaned as he fought to get to his feet. There were 2 sandames standing before him, with one sporting a major bloody gash across his face. You have broken the law, impostor. Prepare to die. The wounded sandame froze with shock, but suddenly, he grinned. His body began to shift and twist to reveal a muscular bald man. Kenpachi Keduin, the real sandame growled, his eyes alight with fury. You will not be allowed to escape. Kenpachi didn't change his expression as he surveyed the 3rd Hokage with a high degree of arrogance, while wiping his and Naruto's blood off his face. I will complete the Yondaime's noble work, he declared. You have been placed under the demon's spell, Lord Hokage, he said respectfully, bowing slightly. Please, allow me to help you. The sandame trembled with rage as got into a battle stance. Kenpachi smirked as he snapped his fingers. Dozens of ninja blurred into existence, surrounding the two from all sides. I deeply apologize, Lord Hokage, Kenpachi said triumphantly. You should have brought along your Anbu. Then perhaps, you might have survived. The sandame didn't look the least bit worried as he kept his firm battle stance. Such arrogance, he said. You underestimate the power of the Hokage. Do you think me so weak? Stand down, and accept your punishment with honor, he growled, narrowing his eyes. Or die here, like a dog. He roared, unleashing his killer intent. Shinobi we. Zedon fell to their knees as they cried in terror, or desperately slit their own throats to end their own horror as the god of the shinobi's killer intent washed over them like a malicious tsunami. Kenpachi's eyes widened as Hiruzen's eyes met his. Naruto, my boy, can you stand now? He asked. Naruto nodded. Hiruzen had healed him the best he could. Yes, he answered as he slowly staggered to his feet. Naruto, he said, yes, watch my back. I promise you, we will prevail. I will not lose here. Kenpachi watched impassively as Naruto and Hiruzen stood together. Hey, Kenpachi, are you really certain we can defeat him? I mean, he is the Hokage after all. We can, and we will, Kenpachi said confidently. After all, we both know that Naruto Uzumaki isn't the only demon around here, he said as his arm began to flicker with red flames. Naruto and Hiruzen stood side by side, their eyes gleaming with unspoken rage as Kenpachi quietly made a hand seal, and vanished into the shadows. Single quote. There's no way that they could defeat the Hokage, but if I use that jutsu, I may have a chance, Kenpachi thought. Attack, one Chunin ordered with a wave of his hand. The first row of Chunin all dashed through hand signs and blew a torrent of fire towards Naruto and Hiruzen. Hiruzen began to make hand seals, but Naruto placed a hand over his, halting his attack. What are you doing, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked, baffled. Naruto walked in front of Hiruzen, ignoring his flabbergasted stare as he gathered chakra into his right palm, right where the two overlapping diamonds for his dark release overlapped each other. The overwhelming heat scorched the ground as the fireball grew closer and closer. What is he doing? Hiruzen thought in alarm. Naruto lifted out a single palm, and the fireball collided with his palm, sending out a pulsing shockwave. Hiruzen as well as the other attackers gaped. Naruto had stopped the fireball cold. Naruto gritted his teeth. Sweat ran down the sides of his face as the fireball was slowly sucked into his palm, until no trace of it remained. The attackers stared on in complete shock along with Hiruzen as they stared as Naruto's now smoking palm. Naruto revved out heavily as he lifted his face to meet theirs. His eyes were gleamed as he raised the same arm. The attackers blasted a series of fireballs from their mouths as Naruto whispered, "Dark style, judgment." Blue flames shot out from his palm in a deadly funnel wave as blue and red flames impacted in a massive firestorm and ignited into an explosion which blasted the attackers back. Hiruzen slammed his hands on the ground and created an earth wall to protect Naruto from the backlash as the wind tossed his gray hair back. That was one of the most powerful fireballs I've ever seen. Naruto's fireblast was on par with those three Chunin combined. His power must have been boosted after his absorbed their jutsu. However, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before in one so young, he thought as made some hand signs. Earth style. Earth flow river. The ground beneath the enemy liquefied and pulled them down into the depths below. They screamed helplessly as the ground any mud seemingly clawed at their faces. As if hungry for blood, Hiruzen whipped to one side, dodging a blast of water as he instantly vanished. Dozens of shinobi cried out as their bodies flew through the air. From a seemingly powerful and invisible force as Hiruzen plowed through the attackers like a bull, destroying any opposition with apparent ease. An unsuspecting fireball blew towards his back, but Naruto leapt in its path as quickly absorbed it. The shinobi who fired it promptly gasped as Naruto returned fire with a powerful massive stream of neon flames, reducing the shinobi to ash, and blasting his mangled body halfway across the slums. He finished with a roll. Hiruzen's eyes widened as Naruto fell to his knees, his breathing ragged as beads of sweat ran down his face. He clutched his dark release arm, trying to get his bearings. Hiruzen deftly blew a fireball from his lips, watching as it blazed into a group of helpless shinobi. He looked at Naruto with concern. That jutsu, the inhaling it must take a high amount of chakra to perform. The fact that he used it twice in rapid succession is alone an admirable feat, but he watched as Naruto slowly struggled to his feet, a defiant look in his eyes, and his mangy hair covering his face. That's not all, Hiruzen mused. He's not had much to eat or drink in the past time, and it's taking a toll on his body. I can't believe I was so thoroughly fooled by Cho. I truly am. He punched a shinobi straight through a building with a single fist. Despicable. Naruto wiped his mouth with his arm as he watched nearly a dozen shinobi charging at him at once. He coughed out blood, and tried to stand, but his legs gave away beneath him. That's it, I'm out of chakra, he thought dejectedly as they grew neared by the second. His eyes widened. No, I will live. He moved his hands together to begin seals, but then suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked behind him, startled. Hiruzen smiled at the boy, his eyes closed. Naruto stared back at the Hokage, and slowly smiled back. An enormous earth dragon launched out of the muddy ground and began its barrage, causing mass chaos and pandemonium as it tore through the enemy ranks, killing anyone that got in its way. Naruto looked at Hiruzen in amazement. This was the power of the Hokage. Hiruzen cracked his stiff neck as he reached in his pouch, and pulled out a pill. He held it out to Naruto. Eat this, my boy, he said gently. It will replenish your chakra. Naruto took it from Hiruzen's warm hand, but eyed it distrustfully. Eat it, you stupid brat, the Kyuubi growled. Naruto's head snapped up as he looked around frantically. Is that Kyuubi? He talking to me? How? He wondered as he concentrated, trying to search for Kyuubi's voice again. Is that you, Kyuubi? He thought loudly, but there was no answer. Naruto sniffed the pill, then hesitantly, placed it in his mouth. His lash fluttered downward as he felt some of his energy flow back into his veins. Hiruzen watched in amazement as Naruto pushed himself to his knees, breathing heavily as he used some hand seals. His palm glowed with black mist as he shot out his hands towards the oncoming shinobi. Chains streamed from his hands in long formations, ensnaring the shinobi. Dark style. Chains of darkness. The shinobi tried to struggle out, but as soon as they even moved, they were all faced with an immense amount of pain. What is going on? One of them gasped as he felt his chakra slipping away. Naruto panted as he watched chakra tear away from the man's gut and flow down the length of the chain into Naruto's own body. The more you struggle, Naruto said, the more it will hurt you. Hiruzen stepped forward, and shot out a blazing fireball from his mouth. The ensnared shinobi cried out in terror as the fireball blasted into them, making the sky momentarily turn glow from its power and heat. Hiruzen's cage cloak whipped in the wind as Naruto pushed himself to his feet. The black chains retracted back into his hands. Are you ready, old man? Naruto said quietly. Hiruzen nodded as he placed a hand on Naruto's back, but Naruto gently pushed it away. Hiruzen eyed him sadly. He could understand Naruto's feelings. Naruto had been away from civilization for too long. He really had never known love. He was confused about many things, and he still didn't fully trust the Hokage after Kenpachi had deceived him so. They turned around to see that there were only 3 attackers remaining, all trembling with fear as they watched their comrades fall easily to the power of the Hokage and the demon brat. Why can't they dodge the demon's attacks? One stammered. Hiruzen frowned as formed the serpent hand seal. The ground rumbled beneath the remaining attackers' feet. And suddenly, they felt the earth beneath them grip their ankles. Their heads snapped down in surprise. They felt themselves sinking into the mud. What? This is why you're pathet. I see friends were unable to dodge Naruto's attacks, Hiruzen stated seriously. They struggled to move, but it was all in vain. Hiruzen flung a series of kunai at them, and all 3 met their mark, split. The attackers' heads down the middle, as Naruto watched with an apathetic expression on his face. For a while, there was only silence as the wind blew through the damp and foul area, tossing the stench of death to the entire slums. Hiruzen stared at Naruto in curiosity. Where did he learn those jutsu? He wondered. And what's even more peculiar, he used bloodline techniques. Neither Minato nor Kushina ever had a bloodline like that. I wonder if this is the Kyuubi's doing. Hiruzen's arms fell to his sides as sighed and began to look around. Who are you looking for, old man? Naruto asked him. Hiruzen looked at him in surprise. I thought it would be obvious, my boy. Did you not notice? During the entirety of the battle, Kenpachi Keduin was nowhere to be found. Naruto shrugged indifferently. How would I notice? I'm only little kid. Hiruzen rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Forgive me, he said, smiling slightly. Then, his became serious. But really, Naruto, don't you want to bring him to justice? He's hiding out there somewhere. Naruto faced his back towards Hiruzen as he stared at the village of Konoha from beyond the slums, his eyes filled with dull joy. There's no point, he said finally. Hiruzen quirked an eyebrow in interest. My only wish was to leave, and I have that chance now. Let's forget about him, and go home. That's all I've wanted for the past 3 months. That was my only wish. Hiruzen lowered his head as he fought not to lose his temper. His rage wasn't directed at Naruto, however. It was directed at Kenpachi, the Kurama clan, the Leaf Village itself. They had no idea what they were doing. Naruto was an innocent child who only desired to be left alone. And yet, they still tortured and belittled him every single day. Naruto, how could you have lived like this for so long? I can't believe how much of a fool I was. In the end, Shikaku had figured out that the council had lured me away from Naruto. I didn't even figure it out myself. I trusted Sho, and yet, Naruto suffered because of my foolishness. I don't deserve forgiveness. He closed his eyes as he hesitantly placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, when he realized something. Naruto's shoulders were shaking. He turned Naruto around to face him as he stared deep into the boy's bright blue eyes, which were now only filled with darkness and pain. Naruto's little body shook, but no tears fell. Naruto was trying to cry, but he didn't know how anymore. Naruto's body didn't know how to react to these strange emotions that he felt now. He wanted to cry and release all his anger. He wanted to laugh in relief. He wanted to scream in pain. He didn't know what to do anymore. He was completely lost, in the depths of his soul. Hiruzen wanted to hug him, but he felt that doing so would be overstepping his bounds. He had caused enough confusion and pain for now. He looked up at the night sky as a lone tear trailed down his wrinkling cheek. Minato, Kushina, I'm so sorry. In the end, I failed both of you. They stood in their respective frozen positions for a time as Hiruzen shifted uncomfortably in the darkness of the night. Naruto, he said gently. Naruto looked up at him, his chest heaving. Let's go home. Naruto simply nodded as his eyes were shadowed by his hair. Hiruzen pulled Naruto on his back as they prepared to depart. Or so they thought. Suddenly, the ground behind them trembled as piercing deadly killer intent filled the area, buffeting the air around them. Hiruzen looked back in surprise as a massive shadow engulfed the entire area, illuminated by the full moon as it roared powerfully, destroying buildings with ease. Naruto's eyes widened as he witnessed the shadow sit upright. Its body was covered in crimson wisp of chakra. 4 tails flowed out behind it, and the ground caved beneath its immense power. Hiruzen's face was expressionless, but in actuality, he was completely dumbstruck. As that, Kenpachi, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the creature growled. Its voice warped beyond imagination. Kenpachi, Hiruzen muttered. What have you done? The creature chuckled gleefully. Now, Lord Hokage. Don't think too badly of me. After all, I had no control over how I became like this. Did you know, I was born here, in the slums. That's where the Keduan clan compound used to be located, after all, he finished, while glaring straight at Naruto in accusation. Yes, Hiruzen sighed. Right after the Kyuubi's first assault destroyed our entire compound, a man helped me escape. I was only a newborn, and being so close to the Kyuubi's massive amount of chakra and killer intent was beginning to affect my well-being. The man knew that the only way to save me was to gather the remaining amount of Kyuubi's chakra in the slums, and seal it inside me. He had to kill others who wanted to accomplish that very goal, and I do believe one of them was one of the 12 ninja guardians. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed as Kenpachi went on about this man, who had caused all this. Kenpachi, he called, interrupting his speech. Who is this man you speak of? Kenpachi's eyes glimmered as he bared his fans, as if mocking him. Now why in the world would I tell you that? Lord Hokage, he said respectfully. Besides, it's not like I could tell you, even if I wanted to. Just know this, it was someone who knew you well. Danzo, that sneaky bastard. The Sandaime cursed as Kenpachi turned his gaze onto Naruto, who was still on the Hokage's back. See now boy, he spat in pure loathing. This is what you are. A demon, and a monster, just like me. And that will never change. You could become Hokage and that still wouldn't ever change. I only managed to copy the small amount of the demon's chakra sealed within me, and mimic it. I am not the true demon here. You are, Naruto Uzumaki. Hiruzen shifted his gaze over to Naruto. Naruto's eyes weren't full of rage or sadness as he thought. Instead, they were only blank and listless. As if he was only half paying attention to what Kenpachi was saying. The two opposing forces stared at each other as the atmosphere grew even more tense. You're wrong. Hiruzen and Kenpachi looked at Naruto in surprise. I'm not the only demon here, Naruto said emotionlessly. I accepted myself long ago. I've accepted what I am, but you on the other hand, it's actually amazing to me at how stupid you are. Naruto, Hiruzen admonished, but then caught himself as Naruto gave an exasperated stare. Oh, right, life or death battle going on here. I shouldn't really worry about the types of words Naruto is allowed to say. My mistake. Look at yourself, Naruto continued. Look at you, and what you're doing right now. You're parading around in that demonic form, trying to intimidate the Hokage of all people with your stupid tricks and creepy voice. What exactly do you hope to about this? Do you really think you stand a chance? Kenpachi's teeth were grinding in anger as he fought to keep a cool head. How dare that demon brat mock me, he thought venomously. His chakra flared as soft red flames began to flicker along his hunched body. You know what's even more interesting? The Kyuubi is a real demon. And even he couldn't do what you have done. You actually think you're doing good. Give me a break. That's enough, he snarled. He tensed, his shoulder muscle hardening, as the ground cracked under his paws. He's getting ready to attack, Hiruzen thought calmly as he gently set Naruto on the ground. His back faced the pseudo-Jinchuriki, as he closed his eyes. He wouldn't hold back anymore. It was time to fight for real. Kenpachi coiled his muscles and leapt straight at Hiruzen, his crimson body blurring as it streaked towards the Hokage like a bullet. Naruto's eyes widened at the sheer attack speed Kenpachi carried in his demon form. Naruto couldn't even follow the man with his eyes. Hiruzen didn't move from his spot as Kenpachi grew closer and closer. Suddenly Hiruzen whipped around, just as Kenpachi's face neared his body. He deftly slammed the back of his fist into the side of Kenpachi's face. Kenpachi's animistic face grimaced with pain as he flew backwards and smashed into a building, kicking up an absurd amount of dust and debris. Naruto gasped in shock. He couldn't even see Kenpachi move, but the old man was easily able to deliver a fatal direct hit. The Hokage truly lived up to his reputation. Kenpachi groaned as he lifted himself from the rubble. He ignored the pain and charged again, this time coming at the Hokage's side. He raised a fist. A crimson chakra arm shot out of his fist and shot at Hiruzen's side. Hiruzen refused to meet Kenpachi's gaze as his hand shot up and caught the attack. Kenpachi's eyes wide, as the ground behind the Hokage exploded and destabilized the ground itself. Hiruzen didn't waste another moment as he wrenched the chakra arm to the side. Kenpachi yelped as he was flung into another building, casing it topple on top of him. The ground trembled as Hiruzen stared his jutsu. Ram right pointing arrow horse right pointing arrow dragon, earth style, earth dragon bomb. The wet mud behind him began to bubble and spread outwards. A massive dragon's face appeared out of the mud. Its eyes glared at Kenpachi balefully as it roared. Kenpachi rubbed his head as he winced in pain. He knew the Hokage was strong, but this was ridiculous. The frail old man had easily caught his chakra arm, even when it shattered the ground behind him from its force. His eyes widened as he watched a massive dragon made of mud struggled out of a muddy pit. It towered above them as it bared its mucky fangs. Hiruzen slammed his hands together as the dragon flew at Kenpachi at top speed, its speed tearing through any solid structure that was near it. The dragon cracked open its mouth and fired globs of earth at Kenpachi. Kenpachi leapt to the side, but he was far too slow. Hiruzen shot torrents of flames from his mouth, setting the mud and dragon on fire. Kenpachi gasped in horror as the flaming earth met its mark, blasting him into the ground and tearing apart the ground. Hiruzen dispelled the jutsu as he observed the huge crater his jutsu had caused. He walked to the crater. Suddenly, he looked around frantically in alarm. He couldn't make heads or tails of Kenpachi's location. I should have been able to sense him, he thought, puzzled. It's strange there's absolutely no trace of him. Like he's just vanished into thin air. Could this be Danzo's doing? If he's experimenting with Kyuubi's chakra, there's going to be a major catastrophic calamity on our hands. Well, it's no use thinking about it now. They've escaped, and that's the end of it. I have no doubt he'll return in time. He stood up and walked back to Naruto, placing him back on his back. They walked past the slum's border, dispelling any genjutsu with ease. As they finally tasted the sweet village air, Naruto breathed in deeply as he savored the scent of his home. His true home. Hiruzen smiled as Naruto began to close his eyes, resting his head on the sandame's shoulder. They walked past the tall healthy trees, and tasted the freedom of Konoha. There were many challenges ahead, but he was confident now. Naruto would be ready. The story begins with the attack of the Kyuubi, who begins his rampage. At the same time, Minato and Toby bat it out with Minato emerging as the victor. Minato saves the leaf from a tailed beast ball and transported the Kyuubi twice, rapidly depleting his chakra in the process. Kushina and Minato saved Naruto from a potential killing blow from the Nine Tails, and Minato reveals his plan to seal the Nine Tails in Naruto, making him its Jinchuriki. Kushina reluctantly agrees. However, just as Minato is about to begin the sealing, Naruto's eyes open for the first time, revealing the eyes of the Rinnegan. Knowing that Naruto is far too young to be able to handle its power and the chakra required for Its jutsus as well as the fact that it could be stolen by greedy shinobi, he seals it away. His intent for the seal to vanish when Naruto had enough chakra and training to protect himself from other shinobi, and his own power. But due to Minato's low supply of chakra, the seal was incomplete, resulting in many future problems later on. From then on, Minato seals the Kyuubi away with the Reaper Death Seal. Just as Kushina dies from her wounds with her husband. At the same time, Kakashi and Guy had disobeyed direct orders and engaged the Kyuubi, only to be healed later by Rin, who is still alive. The next day, Hiruzen mourns the loss of his wife, as well as Minato and Kushina, who died suspicious deaths. It is revealed that Minato and Kushina's bodies had disappeared after the sealing, so there wasn't even a body to bury. Kakashi arrives in his Anbu attire and informs Hiruzen that the council wished to speak with him, despite his retirement. After much discussion and suffering the torture of the bickering council, Hiruzen is appointed to become Hokage once again, much to the annoyance of Danzo and others. Furthermore, Hiruzen stated that Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki is to be kept an S-ranked secret. Fugaku and Tsume try to adopt Naruto, but Hiruzen reminds them that if Naruto is adopted by either of them, it would arouse suspicion. Later, the head of the Kurama clan, Haru Kurama, expresses his hate towards Naruto, and hints that he has a plan for him. Rin expresses her hate towards the Kyuubi and vows revenge for their sensei. Later that day, Hiruzen and the villagers mourn the loss of Minato, the fourth Hokage, and Hiruzen is announced to take the mantle of the third once more. As his speech, Hiruzen addresses the critical state of the village, and give the go-od news of the Kyuubi's death, though this is a lie. However, a genjutsu settles over the entire area, set up by the entire Kurama clan. Haru Kurama reveals Hiruzen's lie, and the villagers become outragged as Hiruzen loses his nerve and retreats back into the Hokage tower with Danzo. Danzo admonishes Hiruzen on losing control, and tells him to get a grip, and command the village as the Hokage. Hiruzen informs the village that Haru Kurama is now an S-class criminal, and will be executed. He also informs them that the same fate will befall those who disobey the law. Haru Kurama is executed with a smile on his face, happy he could cause Naruto grief before he died. With his death, another chain of hate connects to Yakumo Kurama, who vows revenge as well. Meanwhile, Kakashi and Rin infiltrate Sarutobi compound to execute the demon, and with Rin growing more insane and mad as they continue. However, as they finally start, Kakashi stops Rin from killing Naruto, reminding her that Naruto is an innocent child. Rin goes insane, and vows revenge on Naruto, despite Kakashi's intervention as he drags her away. This is where their friendship ends. Later, Hiruzen is visited by Jiraiya, who brings bad news from abroad. Jiraiya tells Hiruzen about Orochimaru's treachery, and how Orochimaru would reveal Naruto's identity if it meant an alliance with another village such as the Stoner Cloud. It is also revealed that the Akatsuki already begin their move, and Hiruzen resolves to go after Orochimaru first, and deal with Akatsuki when the time comes. It is also revealed that Hanzo of the Salamander sealed the Rain's borders, indicating that he has plans as well. Unfortunately, the Akatsuki are safe within Hanzo's domain, and not even Jiraiya's spy network can pierce through it. Hours later, Jiraiya leaves, but reminds Hiruzen that he will be back in a few years after tracking the Akatsuki and Orochimaru's movements. For a while, Hiruzen visits an old friend Cho, whom he trusts very deeply, and leaves Naruto in his care, confident that Cho would give him a happy life. However, it is revealed that Cho is no better than the other villagers as she stabs him, creating his first scar. 3 years later, Naruto is living a horrible life at the orphanage with Hiruzen completely unaware. It is revealed that he remembers his life from the moment of his first birthday, where he received his first beating in the slums. Moreover, this also means that Naruto is very mature for his age, as shown by his superior speech and mannerisms. Despite this, he is still confused regarding his emotions, having never experienced love or kindness from anyone except Hiruzen. After Hiruzen takes him out for some fun on his 3rd birthday, Cho drags him to the slums again for another beating. The beating this time are so harsh, and Naruto's resolve strengthened, weakening the seal on Naruto's eyes. With his Rinnegan activated, Naruto summons a short burst of power, and killed his attacker with the unknown jutsu. Afterwards, the Rinnegan disappears back into its sealed state. Meanwhile, Izuna Uchiha, a friend of Itachi Uchiha, comes to visit him, and talks to him about Itachi's teammates, Isamu and Mito Senju of the near-extinct Senju clan. Also, their older brother, Raiden Senju, carries the Wood Release bloodline. Itachi's team is going to participate in the Mist Village Chunin exams. Soon after, Hiruzen discovers Naruto's beating, and rushes to save. At the same time, the leader is the only survivor of Naruto's attack, and he proceeds to beat Naruto even more. Izuna and Shisui led Itachi, Mito, and Isamu to the slums to help an unknown boy, who is Naruto. It is revealed that Itachi's sensei is the father of Konohamaru, Ichiro Sarutobi. At the slums, the leader of Naruto's attackers reveals that Naruto has the 9 tails sealed in him. Just thereafter, Isamu saves Naruto, despite discovering that Naruto killed his attackers. However, his ankle becomes wounded in process as Ichiro Sarutobi killed the leader of the mob. Afterwards, Hiruzen catches wind what occurred and meets Ichiro and the kids to discuss Naruto. He interrogates Cho, but she manages to escape punishment by feeding him a false story and acting skills. He finds her innocent, and she asks him to sign a document authorizing more protection for Naruto. He signs it without looking at what it actually says. Only later does he realize that it's an official document that authorizes Naruto's confinement to the slums. 3 months later, Naruto is struggling to survive in the slums with mobs and drunkards everywhere he goes. It is revealed he had numerous conversations with the Kyuubi, who actually refuses to help him escape, and is completely indifferent to Naruto's plight. At the same time, Itachi, Mito, Isamu, and Ichiro return from the Chunin exams in the mist, but only Mito and Itachi remain alive. Isamu died when his wounded ankle threw off his balance during a difficult battle, and Ichiro died from unknown causes, though it was speculated that it was a bounty hunter who killed him. Mito and Itachi are devastated at the loss of their teammate and sensei, and they both mourn them. In the slums, Kyuubi finally offers Naruto his help, and unlocks a Kekkei Genkei. Naruto spends his limited time in his mindscape, training for his escape from the slums. In the Kurama clan compound, the Kurama clan makes an alliance with some shapeshifters of the Keduin clan, and propose a plan to kill Naruto in the slums. The next dawn, Naruto begins his escape, destroying any thugs in his way with the inhaling maw and judgment, as well as clones and explosions. He makes it almost to the outskirts, but suddenly, a fake Hiruzen emerges and stabs an unsuspecting Naruto in the back as the ill Hiruzen is distracted by the council's attempts to keep him busy. The fake Hiruzen reveals that the slums was created after the Kyuubi mounted his first-tailed beast ball on the village. Much like an aftermath of a nuclear bomb can cause birth defects, the same can be said about that who were born in the slums, where it's still tainted with residual chakra of the Kyuubi. The real Hiruzen quickly catches on to the ploy and rescue Naruto from the fake Hiruzen, who is revealed to be Kenpachi Keduin, heir of the Keduin clan. Kenpachi hides as his Chunin goons begin their attack. Naruto and Hiruzen fight back, and Naruto runs out of chakra early on. Hiruzen finished off the last attackers easily as Kenpachi emerges from his hiding place in a demonic shroud of the Kyuubi's chakra. Kenpachi reveals that he is a pseudo-Jinchuriki, and someone killed Sora's father in order to obtain Kyuubi's chakra. He said that the one who made him this way was someone close to Hiruzen, and Hiruzen immediately suspected Danzo. Kenpachi surrenders to his own rage as Naruto taunts him. Hiruzen quickly defeats Kenpachi with ease, but Kenpachi manages to escape. Hiruzen takes Naruto out of the slums, and ponders on the future of Minato's son. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.